Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. He didn't have a hockey as powerful as Enel's to cover the whole island, so he had to search manually. Using his wings, he flew to the sky of the City of Angels and went to the upper yard, looking for this specific person. It's not because he didn't have Enel's observation hockey that he couldn't sense some people kilometers away. In a short time, after feeling some members of his group raining in various locations and hearing the explosions, while some were quite flashy as they transformed into their final form of their econ to fight each other, Luffy felt a person training in a corner, covered by rocks. Luffy then approached the site quietly. But he surprised 2 princesses who were with the person he wanted to look for while she was reading a book. Luffy-sama. Shira Hoshi greeted him with her usual joy. Luffy. Vivi also smiled. Sharky. Megalo, who was also there, greeted. Hello, girls and Megalo, how's everything? Luffy greeted everyone, and they all responded. Luffy then looked at Robin, who closed her book and looked at him. Did you come looking for me? She said with a small smile. Yes, it's time for us to go to that place. He said calmly. The place he wanted to take Robin to was the Golden Bell. Robin had already heard from Luffy about the poneglyph. But she wanted to go with him, even if it would take a few months to see something so close to her. After all, she was used to seeing the stones with him, making her even consider him as a good luck charm. Knowing this, Luffy invited her in the morning to go to the place, so the moment had come. Luffy, I can't fly, not like you. She commented, with a shy smile. Luffy nodded and picked her up by the waist as he took off into the air after saying goodbye to the princesses. They flew quickly to what Luffy calls, the great beanstalk above Skypiea. Quickly landing in front of the giant golden bell, where, besides that large gold structure, there was also the poneglyph with the location of Poseidon, which ironically was present in Skypiea at that moment. They went in front of the gold poneglyph next to it, while Luffy began to look surprised as Robin talked about the name of Goldie Roger having inscribed his own words in the ancient language, wondering if he also knew it. Did he know the ancient language? She murmured. No. He has something special, called the voice of all things. It's an ability even rarer than the Conqueror's hockey. He commented. How do you know about this? Forget it. Robin commented, already knowing that Luffy had knowledge that no one else had, but she respected him. I also possess this ability. It can hear about anything. It seems like everything in this world has its own memory. I can see the life of a stone in the middle of the road or even hear the sound of sea kings talking. It's quite strange and complex. And I haven't even awakened this ability. Luffy commented. Robin looked surprised after Luffy said that, but nodded in silence at the end, already knowing that this man was incredible. Luffy looked at the ancient words and ended up looking at Robin, asking. Robin, can you teach me the ancient language? Luffy asked curiously, wanting to learn as well. After all, he would have plenty of time later, after the war, and could improve his knowledge even more. Robin looked stunned but had a bright smile on her face. Of course. She said with the same smile, since she could carry that burden, which is dangerous, with a man she loved. After Luffy and Robin decided to leave, Luffy didn't take the bell with him, he left it there. But before that, he went up to the bell and punched it so hard that it immediately recoiled to the opposite side, striking the first toll. And then, against gravity, striking the second, third, fourth. All of Skypiea heard the golden bell. Even the people of the Blue Sea could hear it. In Jaya, a man who lived in isolation, even with all the devastation that the island had now, looked up in surprise hearing that bell, wondering if he wasn't dreaming about it. After that, Luffy returned to his crew. He had one more matter to resolve, which was a grand wedding that he had promised to many of his women. So he had to prepare for the wedding. The next day, a grand event happened in the Gold City itself, or what was left of it in the upper yard. Luffy would marry all his current women in the unique event, since it was a requirement after they found out he had already married another woman while he was away. On the Black Pearl, the future wives were meeting in the same place after dressing for the occasion. Finally, my husband is going to be my husband. Alvida murmured in a white dress, with satisfaction. Nami, you look beautiful in that dress. Nojiko said in her blue dress matching her hair, while Nami was in the same style in an orange dress. Thank you, you too. That dress matches almost as well as Vivi's. She commented, pointing to the Princess of Alabasta in a slightly more sky blue dress. I have a better dress than you. A voice emerged amid compliments, and it was Reiju, pointing at Lami. What nonsense, that pink does not suit you at all. Lami replied, crossing her arms. The girl in a black dress is speaking. You do know this is a wedding, right? You'll never be a wife because of that. Reiju declared with a grimace. Why are you always fighting and competing? Vivi complained from the side. Kaya ha 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 ha. Makita laughed on the side, wearing a yellow dress, since she had also become one of Luffy's partners, thus she would marry him as well. Foo foo foo, can't you stop even at your own wedding? Robin chuckled on the side, wearing a white dress like Alvida. What a bunch of weirdos. Yuta murmured to the side, wearing a purple dress matching her eyes. Hey, we should go. Yamato's voice was heard, and everyone looked at her, shouting. Why are you dressed like that? All exclaimed, since Yamato was still wearing her Wano attire without any decoration for the wedding. I like this outfit, so I'll wear it. She declared with determination, leaving all the women just sighing. Let's go, we should already be there. Nojiko spoke, then, all 10 women went to the venue, which ended up being an event that gathered the entire population of Skypiea, as it was a grand wedding. Ganfall would be the person officiating the ceremony. The event then started with the entry of the brides in different dresses, and all the women approached Luffy standing while Bippo once again was Luffy's best man. They are so beautiful. Shirahoshi said in a corner watching the women approaching Luffy with a sparkle in her eye. You wanted to be there too, didn't you? Kuina asked beside her. I first have to ask Daddy's permission before marrying Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi commented. As the women arrived on stage, they ended up forming a line and one by one joined Luffy for Ganfall to continue the wedding vows. One by one all went through the ritual sealing a kiss with their captain. I declare, husband and wives. Ganfall finished as soon as they were all done, and they proceeded to a platform where Bippo levitated them to a deserted floating archipelago island for them to spend the next days on a long honeymoon in a house that Luffy had built with the system. Chapter 213, Muja Wars are back. Luffy stayed with his women on honeymoon for 3 days, with Baby 5 joining them. Luffy didn't marry her because she wasn't yet an official member, despite her seeming quite in love with him, even though sometimes she tried to kill him. But his reinforced body felt nothing from her attempts. Now, with everything ready, all the crew members waiting for him, he was finally ready to get back to handling the main crew. Adjusting his cloak, placing Ace on his waist and his pistol, a new one he had recently bought for 1 billion Baileys on the other, fixing his hat, and looking into the mirror in his cabin satisfied, he turned his attention to the door of this place. His bed was much larger than it used to be, but it was empty at this moment, since everyone was waiting outside. Luffy left his cabin and went to the ship's deck through the main hallway and finally emerged outside. He saw everyone waiting for him, but he kept walking, passing by Yamato, Shirahoshi, Megalo, Zoro, Kuina, Lami, Bippo, Nami, Usopp, Reiju, Chaochu, Hugo, Nojiko, Hucky, Alvida, Vivi, Laboon, Crew, Robin, Chopper, Yuta, and Baby 5, who now completed his main crew. Maybe I can get 2 or more members on this trip. Luffy thought with satisfaction. He continued walking until he found his spot, the prow of the ship. He landed on Ifrit's head and looked over his entire crew waiting for him to speak. Luffy had a small satisfied smile on his face. We've been off the sea for a few months, it's time for us to return to the sea below us and show our power to the world. He said, and many smiled, looking forward to showing their new strength to the world. He had all those official crew members before arriving at Skypiea and added 3 more members, but Enel was in his personal training on an island of Combelt. He turned his attention to the city and the crowd that was looking at the ship. Currently Black Pearl was in the port of the City of Angels while everyone came to bid them farewell. They would remain here training and doing some important things, while the main crew would participate in the conquest of the first half of the Grand Line. There were some things that some people here needed to do. Some members of the old Baroque orcs would return to Alabasta and reunite the organization that Crocodile commanded, with Luffy aiming to turn it into an information network in this sea and protect the kingdoms he declared as his territory. All the others would remain here and stay with the research and becoming stronger. He then decided to finalize his stay in this kingdom. Looking at Usopp and Ecchi. Let's depart, raise the anchor and steer the ship out of this kingdom, he declared. Then, Usopp quickly raised the anchor effortlessly with his current strength, while Ecchi headed to the helm. Black Pearl finally began to move away from the Island of Angels and headed towards the Cloud Sea. While everyone shouted and said goodbye, Black Pearl headed for the Gate of Heaven. It didn't take long to pass through the welcome structure and reach the borders of the divided territory, as they passed through the entire archipelago of floating islands, where Beppo had permanently left in this place until they returned. The ship soon reached the limit of the cloud sea and encountered the 10,000-meter drop, turning sharply as if it were a waterfall towards gravity, but it didn't immediately fall, as Beppo had already used his power on Black Pearl. The ship began to float. "This is amazing," Shirahoshi commented. Some looked at her as if she couldn't already fly, wondering why she would be so surprised by the ship flying. Luffy was a traditional pirate by nature, so he wanted to travel by water instead of by air on his journey, so the ship continued descending until it hit the seawater and finally stabilized, continuing on its way with the wind. Luffy laughed with joy. "We're finally back," he shouted from the prow of the ship. Soon, the routine from months ago returned again, while each member went back to their daily activities, when they were not training on that ship. Although some continued to train in the training room to improve their skills using seastone handcuffs, since they did not want to destroy the ship. Luffy also made himself comfortable while wearing shorts and sunbathing while drinking a juice that Raja brought him, saying that she was being a better wife than the emo woman. Nami approached him. "Luffy, where should we go now?" she asked. "Let's head straight to Water 7. Set a log pose on the helm and let Ecchi steer the ship there," Luffy ordered, and his navigator nodded, doing so. The ship moved forward. In the late afternoon, Luffy left the crew and went down to the ship's prison, where there were 2 beings chained in that place. "How are you feeling?" he commented, looking at Doflamingo and Pajon in each cell. "I know it's been a tough month for you. But I'm sure you'll soon be free again." Luffy crossed his arms. When Luffy had captured Doflamingo, he expected Lami to try to kill him, and he would gladly give that to his wife, even if it enraged Kaido, but Luffy already had his daughter, so he was not worried about the 4 Emperor Su. However, when Lami heard this, she was surprised, but declined as soon as Luffy spoke, because she herself wanted to end him in another way, not like this, as it would be too easy. Seeing that he couldn't do much against him, then he decided to leave it to negotiate his life and make some money, since his was currently running out after spending so much. Mugiwara. Doflamingo growled at Luffy. "Hey, don't be so angry. I'm sure the world government will soon get in touch so we can make a trade," Luffy commented, waiting for that. As he returned to Pajon. "Hey, how about you work for me? You seem competent, despite being quite wild," Luffy commented, and Pajon did not respond. After seeing the prisoners, he returned to his captain's cabin, where his documents and a large map of his journey drawn by Nami were. He sat in his armchair and began to quickly mark on the board his current strength. Captain, Luffy. Vice Captain, Yamato. Swordsman, Zoro, Kuina. Tankers, Alvida, Hugo. Cooks, Rachel, Ecchi. Doctors, Lami, Chopper. Helmsman, Secretary, Vivi. Sharpshooters, Usopp. Maid, Baby 5. Shipguard, Chouchou. Mascots, Laboon, Crew, and Megalo. Marine Support, Shirahoshi. Musicians, Yuta. Archaeologists, Robin. Economist, Beppo. Informant, Nojiko. Navigator, Nami. Engineers, Enel. Luffy looked at the list. He just didn't have a member for one official role, which was the helmsman, but he believed that Jinbai would become his official member for this role. He still had Frankie, another engineer, and Brook, another musician, to recruit on this journey, and he was confident he could do it. Frankie would be the most troublesome to convince, but Luffy would give him an atom tree to make the Sunny go. Yes, Luffy planned to build the ship anyway. It wouldn't be the official one, but still, it would be an addition to the collection of ships he had been accumulating in his vault. He could have spent another 1 billion to take Black Pearl to the next level, but it would be as big as Moby Dick, and Luffy didn't want it to be that size at the moment. Its current state was in the best shape for the group. Looking back at all the members, Luffy was excited to face the forces of this sea. He didn't know what Kaido was doing, since he hadn't shown up even with those 2 as prisoners, but surely there were some assassins following him. However, he managed to divert their attention when he went to see Yuta, so he would meet them soon. Now, his goal was Water 7 and to hunt down Cypher Pal 9 agent and recruit Frankie. Why would he hunt Cypher Pal 9 agent? Simple, he planned to increase the bargaining against the government, getting more milk from the cow. Luffy was immersed in his thoughts when he felt a presence at the door. Baby 5, what are you doing there? Come in. He ordered, and his official maid entered with a shy tone. Do you need me, Captain? She said with a mix of shyness and hope. Of course, come here. Luffy commented with a smile. She approached, still shy, but her expression changed as her hand turned into a weapon. Then die. And Luffy just looked at her, pointing the barrel at him, shooting point blank. I think you do this on purpose, don't you? Luffy commented as the bullet fell from his forehead without hurting him and continued looking at the woman. I don't know what the captain is talking about. But your maid is behaving so badly. I think she must be punished. She murmured timidly while lifting her skirt to show her bottom. Luffy sighed. He still couldn't get used to this masochistic woman, but Luffy shrugged as he would punish her and have his way with her at that moment. Chapter 214 Green Bull. The sea was calm, while a ship stood still upon it at this moment, its flag waving with the wind, and its flag with a wild and powerful symbol made anyone immediately flee. After all, these were the Beast Pirates. However, even carrying that name, the atmosphere on the ship didn't seem very good. They are doing basic things but still without much willingness as they sail. Jack was sitting in a chair on the deck. He has been waiting for reinforcements for more than a month. But he had achieved nothing, and Queen, the only one who had spoken to him during this time, said that Kaido went to an unknown place and King after him to stop him and return, but it has been a month and he could not take his group of men to the first half of the Grand Line, not while Kaido and King do not return, which was worrying, since Kaido had taken the 6-month supply stock with him from looting. Mr. Jack. A man dressed in the Beast's uniforms approached cautiously. What is it? Jack spoke in a bad mood, making the man afraid. A ship. He began, but Jack was impatient. We've sunk hundreds of them in the last month, destroy that one too. Jack ordered angrily. But. The man seemed to want to say more. What is it? Jack looked at him. The ship's flag. It's the Straw Hats. The man finally said and Jack quickly stood up. Is it them? Are they here? He went to the side of the ship and saw the speck in the sea approaching. This is my chance. I will have my revenge on you. Straw Hat. Jack growled as soon as he saw the ship's flag with a magnifying glass grabbed by his men. On the Black Pearl, another person was looking at Jack's ship with a magnifying glass. He saw the ship and frowned before turning his attention back to the deck of the ship, where Luffy was sunbathing with his wives and while Chopper and the other animals were running around chasing each other. Luffy! Usopp shouted, making Luffy move his sunglasses and look at his marksman. There's a ship in our way. And it's the Beast Pirates. He said. My father? Yamato asked beside him while wearing a bikini. It must be Jack, I'm surprised he's still here. Luffy comments and looks back at Usopp. Can you take them down? Luffy asks. Me? But isn't Jack one of Kaido's calamities? Usopp gets scared for a moment. Come on Usopp, you're a brave warrior of the sea. You must show your power. Luffy encourages him and Usopp seemed to have gained courage after that. Yes. I am a brave warrior of the sea. He said and went to his cabin, coming out of it with a huge weapon that Luffy gave the design for him to create. You! Chopper shouted excitedly seeing Usopp pulling out the weapon. Soon many of the crew came to see the marksman placing the weapon on the edge of the Black Pearl as he prepared to launch a shot at the ship on the other side. He positioned the weapon while having a great aim. Jack on the other side looked at a small reflection on the ship with the sunlight being reflected on Usopp's sight, wondering what that was. Usopp prepared to shoot, but instead of pulling the trigger, wings grew on his back, releasing the power of Bahamut. A bright blue energy began to circle the weapon, and it was charging little by little as everyone on the Black Pearl's crew stopped what they were doing to watch Usopp preparing his shot. Jack on the other side felt that something bad was going to happen, frowning wondering what that feeling was. Let's show the power of a brave warrior of the sea. Usopp said and pulled the trigger. With an explosion that even made him recoil a few meters, his light shot flew to the ship 5 kilometers away. The shot traveled as fast as a Kizaru attack. Jack only saw the light coming and reached his ship quickly. As soon as it hit the wood of the ship, it immediately exploded. Boom. The explosion grew, disintegrating all the water around while steam rose. Jack and his ship were totally covered by the explosion. Hey, didn't you overdo it? Kuina said from the side. Usopp scratched his head, looking at the explosion in the distance, large enough to destroy an entire city. Very good, Usopp, you just threw a calamity into the air. Luffy said, clapping. He knew that shot couldn't destroy Jack, but surely the mammoth was now sinking into the sea. How beautiful. Shirahoshi also clapped for the explosion. Well, now I'm going back to my things. Luffy said, reading a book as he returned to sit in his chair. His routine was peaceful in the following days. He didn't demand any training from the crew at that time because they were quite prepared for the big enemies, and they could simply enjoy the journey without worrying about it for the time being. Luffy ended up liking this style. He spent the entire night with his women, which demanded a lot from him, even using the more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit to make all the women quite satisfied and sleep peacefully. He would wake up in the morning and have some sword fighting training with Zoro and Kuina, then go to Reiju for something to eat and spend the morning reading books. Now, during the afternoon, he would enter the ship and enter a room where a person was waiting for him while reading a book seated. You finally arrived. She said with a seductive tone. Of course, I'm here, Professor. Luffy smiled, looking at Robin. She began to teach reading the poneglyphs. Robin is always quite reserved, but when alone, she always lets loose with him. You can't wear such a short skirt to teach someone, Luffy commented, looking at the woman's clothes. Didn't you like it? She teased once again. Of course, I liked it, but seeing you like this, my desire is to fuck you before we start anything. He commented, not that he thought it bad his woman trying to seduce him while they are alone. She walked up to him, leaving her chair, and threw him into another while mounting Luffy. We can have a fuck before we start, you know we hardly have time alone, so let's enjoy it. She commented as she began to take off her cloak and lift her skirt, showing she was without panties. Luffy was already quite accustomed to having sex all over the ship. All the women who managed to get some free time with him seemed obsessed with having sex, and Luffy, as a good husband, didn't deny it, using any part of the ship, from Nami's map room, Nojiko's library, Reijo's kitchen, Lami's infirmary, the training room, the vault, the storage, the sauna, and even his own cabin. Luffy let it happen and had sex with Robin for a while in that room. Then both were studying the ancient language with the copies taken from the poneglyphs they already had, with Robin giving an explanation. Luffy was learning quickly everything he could about the lost language, using his more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit. In a few days, he was achieving a result of months. After studying and training a bit more in the afternoon, Luffy completed the night with a big banquet among them. This was the routine without many changes, while the ship continued to sail. However, one day, Usopp again alerted about another ship approaching. What's this? He said curiously. What's up? Hugo approached. There's a man pedaling a strange boat coming towards our direction. He commented, and Luffy, curious, picked up a magnifying glass and saw the man, quite surprised by who was approaching. It seems that before he didn't join the Navy, he was some kind of mercenary? Luffy murmured, looking at the man, since this was one of the future Navy admirals, and it seemed he was hunting them, probably to rescue Doflamingo who was imprisoned on the ship. Luffy wasn't wrong, the man received a proposal of 2 billion to hunt Monkey D. Luffy and his crew, rescuing Joker and Page on. Attracted by the money as a mercenary that he is, this man quickly set out to sea. He was one of the greatest hunters of the underworld, so his employer entrusted him with Doflamingo's vivre card, and he followed it. However, this turned out to be one of his major problems. The vivre card, which pointed towards the calm belt that lies between the Grand Line and the East Blue, shifted southwards, and he followed it to the calm belt between the Grand Line and the South Blue, having to face various sea kings of those waters. And at the moment he saw the vivre card indicating he was close, a huge storm erupted. Remember the storm that Luffy and Uta caught? So he ended up losing his ship and was left with only a boat that he had to pedal to move on the sea. This made him spend weeks until he could get out of the calm belt with so many sea kings attacking him. He finally emerged in the Grand Line frustrated and still did not give up, but today he finally managed to find his target. The man who will one day be known as Aramaki, the Ryokato. In other words, the admiral known as the Green Bull. Was now pedaling at full steam towards the Black Pearl wanting to finalize his hunting mission. Chapter 215, Green Bull 01. Ryokato continued pedaling towards the ship, now having his target in sight. Luffy glanced at him for a moment and then returned to his crew. Do you know him, Luffy? Yamato approached. A bit, this man is on the level of a Navy admiral. He said. What? An admiral? Should we run away? He seems to be hunting us. Kaeru. Hearing Luffy's words, some crew members panicked, but the captain just shrugged it off. It would really be hard to deal with him alone, even with our training. Luffy acknowledged the power of the forest Logia and how troublesome it is. But, look around us, who in the world could face us alone? He said with a smile. This is a good test for all of us. I don't like fighting together against just one opponent, but since he came to our ship, let's show him our combined power. Luffy declared, making everyone nod in agreement. Ryokato noticed a movement on the ship and saw a man with a long nose holding a weapon, pointing at him. Aye. This looks dangerous. He murmured and then couldn't even react when Usopp launched another shot of light in his direction. Boom. The explosion once again disintegrated the water, but unlike Jack, Ryokato could fly, appearing above the explosion with a flower spinning on his back, allowing him to glide in the air. He can fly with a giant flower? Usopp murmured after taking his weapon off aim. Luffy next to him slapped his back. Why don't you fight him? He asked. Me? Usopp seemed unsure. Don't be like that, show your training power. You made Jack, a calamity, sink into the sea. You can freely show your power against him. Besides, you're not alone. He said, wanting to see the extent of his sniper's power, one of the few Luffy had yet to see in full action. Usopp nodded and still with the wings on his back from the attack he had made, he flew up, leaving the Black Pearl and meeting the man in the air. "Hey, Luffy. Will he be okay?" Nami approached. "Usopp is very strong now, he can take care of himself." Luffy spoke and continued. "I don't think Usopp can beat him, but he will surely put on a good show." Luffy smiled. In the air, Ryokaja looked, narrowing his eyes behind his glasses at the long-nosed man flying with wings towards him. "I don't remember seeing this power in the report. So it must be a recent power," he murmured. Raising his hand, his fingers began to transform into spikes, launching them at Usopp, who quickly saw the movement and opened his wings, generating balls of light and launching them at the man in the sky. The spikes and streaks of light collided, but Usopp had the advantage, as in addition to disintegrating with the streaks of light, the shots continued flying towards Ryokaja. Without much time to react, since he didn't have much mobility in the air, they collided with his body. Boom. 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 A bunch of explosions occurred on that side, and Usopp kept an eye on the man, feeling with his observation hockey that his attack didn't even affect the Logia. Ryokaja appeared after the smoke dissipated, appearing with parts of his body missing but regrowing like a kind of growing plant. "What ability is this?" Vivi asked Luffy on the Black Pearl. "This is the Mori Mori no Mi, the forest fruit. Ryokaja is the forest man with this Logia." Luffy spoke. "A forest Logia. His abilities are so versatile that he can even create a forest in Alabasta." Robin added. "A forest in Alabasta," Vivi murmured, "as that would be quite useful for the citizens." "Well. Anyway, let's see how Usopp will deal with him." Luffy comments and sees Usopp pulling his pistols from his waist. Using dual pistols, Usopp's body begins to glow and he disappears the next moment, appearing above the man, where Usopp kicks him making him fly while still recovering. With him falling, Usopp points the pistols and starts firing shots of light. Boom. Boom. Another part of Ryokaja's body is destroyed, as he falls to the ground. "He really got him good." Kuina comments as she watches Ryokaja's body being destroyed, only for a sprout to emerge from the light, falling towards the sea before hitting the ground. Roots began to emerge from it, spreading across the sea at that moment and expanding in all directions. "Can he create roots in the sea?" Nojiko was surprised. "It seems quite similar to Q's," Luffy adds, and Robin nods in agreement. The roots continued to expand across the water's surface, and plants and trees began to emerge from them, turning the area into a forest, even hiding the sea beneath it all. The Black Pearl shuddered. "This guy. He is targeting us too," Hugo commented, looking around as he felt the roots covering the ship's hull and spreading upwards. "Ah!" Chopper cried out as he saw a root emerging and chasing after him, but Luffy grabbed it before it could reach Chopper and quickly burned it with his purple flames. "Chaozu, use your ice and freeze the sea around the ship, to prevent these roots from emerging so easily," Luffy ordered, and Chaozu transformed into Cerberus, biting the emerging roots before one of its heads opened its mouth and produced a white beam into the sea, immediately freezing it. As soon as he saw the frozen sea, Luffy nodded in satisfaction, knowing he wouldn't have to worry about an attack from below, but the roots continued to expand until reaching the ice. That's when a powerful attack came from the sky, halting the advance of the Mori Mori no Mi. Usopp began to bombard the roots as they grew. A tree emerged with a cut in the middle of the rising forest. "That's huge," Ecchi exclaimed upon seeing it. "Wow." Shirahoshi seemed fascinated. "That's scary," Usopp shouted from above, finding the huge face on the tree quite bizarre while shooting at it with a grimace. Suddenly, the face on the tree looked at him, causing him to lose courage with those eyes. "Usopp, you can do better than that," Luffy shouted from the ship, finding his crewmate cowering over little when he hadn't even used all his power. "Luffy's right, I'll face him," Usopp shouted with determination. The tree looked at him, ignoring the Black Pearl, since Ryokaja wanted to eliminate this troublesome individual and capture the Straw Hats. From the forest, giant hands began to grow in the form of fists and were launched at Usopp, who aimed his pistols at the attack. Boom 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 boom. Ryokaja had evolved his fruit so much that fire, being the greatest weakness of the forest, ended up making it resistant to this type of element. The same could be said of light, as the wooden spikes came out of the explosion with some parts missing and heading for Usopp in the air, who had to use his agility to dodge the attacks. Seeing no other choice, Usopp then dashed forward, going towards Ryokaja transformed into that huge tree. He faced the fists, but Usopp had moonwalk, his wings, and the element of light for movement, so he descended zigzagging through the air while dodging the fists and getting close to his enemy. As soon as he was in front of the tree, Usopp transformed with a burst of light into Bahamut. His shadow covered the tree, and he clamped his claws onto the trunks while biting a stunned Ryokaja for seeing this giant dragon taking him down hard. For the crew, it was an incredible scene as the dragon grabbed the huge tree with its giant body and bit its trunk. "Get out of here!" Ryokata said while creating fists to push Usopp away. But the dragon didn't let go and continued biting his trunk, with a light beginning to emerge in its mouth. You think that will work against me? Ryokata spoke, still surprised that this shooter was a mythical zone of a dragon he had never heard of. Usopp didn't stop, unleashing his power while biting the huge tree. Boom! His power ran like a huge beam of light, disintegrating everything in its path, causing half of the tree to disappear along with the forest behind it. How strong! Yuta exclaimed on the deck, covering her eyes as the energy light traveled and even covered the sunlight. After a while, with the enormous sound, things began to calm down as a part of the sea was left without water, and with the force of gravity, the sides began to flood the middle part. Bahamut was still caught in the tree, however, a huge tree hand with Haki hit him, sending him flying back, feeling the impact of the punch. Ryokata had returned again while the tree returned to normal, now with him using Haki. That hurt. Usopp exclaimed in his dragon form as he spat out blood. He opened his wings, and white light balls appeared again. He was going to fight again. Releasing his energy, he shot towards the tree, while Ryokata didn't stay behind, building trees with fists to attack as well. The light and the trees collided with each other, generating numerous explosions in that area, but Usopp was at a disadvantage and was thrown back. However, he flew up, launching energy directly at Ryokata. Boom! 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 Luffy. Usopp could only use armament Haki, something he is not yet proficient in. Zoro commented. It's true, but we should let Usopp fight this fight. It will be good training for him. He said, looking at the fight. The fight between the forest and the dragon continued as Usopp and Ryokata kept up a tremendous clash in this area of the sea. Attacks of light and trees continued for the next hour. However, Usopp began to be at a disadvantage, receiving many hits from Ryokata with Haki. In the end, Usopp lost his transformation and fell unconscious into the forest. Ryokata did not stop there, wanting to suck Usopp's energy. He used his roots to advance against the fainted shooter, but could not catch him. After all, he had disappeared from the place, with Lamy using room and swapping him to bring Usopp back to the ship. It was a beautiful fight. Luffy spoke satisfied and looked at Lamy. Send us there, he said, and she raised her finger. Ryokata, a bit frustrated for losing his prey, saw new opponents arriving at that moment. Luffy, Yamato, Reiju, Nami, Shirahoshi, Zoro, Kuina, and Hugo appeared in the middle of the forest created by Ryokata. Luffy took his first step. Let's do this, let's see who defeats him using their transformation. Luffy smiled excitedly, as his arms turned to Haki and flames began to emerge around him. The same could be said of his companions, each releasing their element, ready to fight against the giant tree that scowled at them as prey. Chapter 216, Green Below 2. Luffy was looking at Ryokata with a solemn gaze, while the tree itself did not like how all those pirates were looking at it, as if they were competing among themselves for who would deliver the final blow. It's a beautiful tree, it will be satisfying to cut it down. Zoro commented, drawing his katanas from their sheaths. This guy has a funny face. Yamato murmured, looking strangely. He is big, but seems so easy to beat. Hugo commented with crossed arms. It's a shame that my rival isn't here, I could beat her in this competition. Reiju commented with a cigarette in her mouth. What beautiful flowers, the forest is so vast. Shirahoshi ignored the tree and started to observe the effect of the Mori Mori no Mi. Luffy remained silent. Kuina also made no comment. Hey, you should be paying attention to our enemy. Nami said. Yes, Nami-sama. Shirahoshi spoke, now looking at the tree. You all seem very calm. The tree spoke for the first time, observing them. Because we are calm, you spinach. Zoro replied, placing his last weapon in his mouth. Then try to get rid of this. Ryokata and countless roots grew under the crew members' feet, but all disappeared at that moment, escaping the reach of the forest and appearing in the sky. Hey, Zoro initiated the attack. Kuina murmured, as Zoro was already in front of the tree with his swords. Seeing this, Ryokata launched an attack while using Haki to defend and attack the swordsman. The swords and a fist with Bakery and Haki clashed against each other, creating an explosion of red lightning. You might have beaten Usopp, but that's because he's not a specialist in armament Haki. Zoro commented and forced his swords against the fist, cutting it. What? Your Haki beat mine? Ryokata wasn't fighting seriously yet, but was surprised by this development. You should be paying attention to your surroundings. A voice emerged from beside the tree. Ryokata looked to the side and saw Kaido's daughter with her weapon, launching it against him. His face immediately flew back with the force of Yamato's Haki. That hurt. He murmured, as he fell. New trees began to grow from the ground and flew towards Yamato, who began to dodge and punch, but could no longer get close to him. Zoro on the other side began to cut down the trees. This isn't good. Ryokaja commented and started to press the pirate sea even more, with the forest still growing. Suddenly, numerous attacks, ice, red fire, purple fire, wind, water, and stones, began to bombard the forest. Ryokaja was surprised as his forest began to be reduced by the attacks. Are they overdoing it? Vivi asked from the boat, seeing everything being bombarded. In the sky, Luffy launched his flames, Rage of the Phoenix flames kicking with fire cuts. Shirahoshi created a water ball with her hands and threw them, turning into water dragons. Nami created winds with her hands, Hugo created giant stones and launched them with his fists, and Kuina sliced the air, sending cold energy. The forest turned into a series of elemental explosions, while below, Yamato ran through the explosions heading towards Ryokaja to launch another attack, and Zoro sent cuts eliminating all the fist trees. Ryokaja was really under pressure, when he ended up losing his posture, and the swordsman took advantage of his open side and launched a cut. The tree was cut in half, but Ryokaja managed to escape, while another tree emerged further away. However, a line of blood appeared on his face. That's it. Ryokaja seemed quite frustrated, so much so that he didn't even notice the pink-haired woman using moonwalk and approaching while her feet filled with flames with a spin and hitting another side of the tree's cheek. The tree felt the hockey and flames on Reiju's feet and was thrown to the opposite side, while it flew, breaking everything in the forest. I will kill you all. Ryokaja exclaimed again, but his sound was muffled as soon as Nami flew with her Garuda wings in front of him and, using both hands, enveloped the forest within a hurricane. Ryokaja tried to hold his forest against that wind. A heavy man landed in front of him in the midst of the woods. Hugo propelled himself even with that wind and jumped on Ryokaja, closing his hand with hockey and punching his chin before the tree could react much. Ryokaja immediately flew into the sky with the force of Hugo along with Nami's wind. He finally found himself outside of the hurricane while his face was already bleeding. Shirahoshi appeared at that moment in front of him. Tree-sama, I will fight against you. Shirahoshi spoke, somewhat shyly, and with a movement of her two hands, she created water using oxygen molecules and a huge water sphere to trap Ryokaja inside. Kuina made her move, appearing beside Shirahoshi and using her sword cut, the water ball turned into spiky ice. It looks like it's my turn. Luffy was even further above everyone. He raised his fist behind. And everyone, feeling this, began to move away. Even Yamato, Hugo, Zoro, and Nami in the forest started to retreat. The flames rocks began to grow through Luffy's fist and expanded until it became a massive flame, running like a vortex, until Luffy flew towards the ice sphere with his fist with those flames and punched it. The ice sphere caught fire and flew downwards like a purple meteor, colliding with the forest above the sea. What happened after it fell was an endless explosion of Luffy's flames, which, like a meteor, began to run everything around. The forest was entirely covered by the flames and disintegrating everything. Boom. The explosion stopped only 30 seconds later while the smoke and steam from the sea rose, covering everything in it. Damn, Captain. Did you win? Zoro murmured. You know I didn't, Zoro. Luffy commented before feeling something. The sea appeared full of debris from what was left of the forest scattered everywhere. While the water was returning to normal, a sprout emerged and spread again like the first time, and another forest emerged again with the central tree. Ryokaja finally emerged, but not as well as before. His face was toasted to charcoal, his nose was broken, faces cut, and a bit sunken from the previous attacks. It's quite a sight. He managed to become even uglier. Hugo murmured. Ha ha ha. He looks angry. Luffy smiled. Ryokaja couldn't exclaim in front of the beating he took, he could only growl and start attacking them again. His forest followed to the sky with fist trees and he tried to hit the group that began to dodge again and go in his direction. Again, the fight continued with Luffy and the others not combining attacks anymore, going into a direct confrontation against the forest creature. The crew on the Black Pearl continued to watch the show of elements that followed in the next 20 minutes. They're giving him a beating. Alvida said, looking at the fight. GRR. K.A.R.U. WLF. Sherry. Go Captain. Amazing. At least some seen the animals seem so happy. Nojiko laughed, seeing the animals with Bippo and Chopper cheering for Luffy and the others. In the end, the forest once again was destroyed and Ryokaja was even worse off. Why? Why am I losing so badly to a group of rookies? Ryokaja growled. He really could not do beyond trying to defend. One of his eyes was already closed while more blood dripped from his nose and mouth, suffering numerous attacks with haki. I think we should finish him. Luffy commented. Luffy-sama. Can I try something? Shirahoshi suddenly said. Sure. I guess you can. Luffy commented, wondering what she wanted to do. Seeing the forest emerging again, Shirahoshi stood in front of the group swimming through the air. She took a deep breath and looked at the tree with a much fiercer look than usual. Ryokazu immediately felt that something bad was going to happen. Shirahoshi then shouted. "Come!" she said, and a sound wave emerged from her. The sea immediately entered a tidal wave, leaving everyone surprised. "What is this?" Ryokazu asked, frowning. "Hey, what's happening?" Vivi asked, worried, while Chopper started to run away crying in fear. "I don't know," Nojiko commented. "What's happening?" Robin also asked. "This." Usopp finally woke up and looked around, moving to the side of the ship. "It's like what happened in the East Blue," he exclaimed. "She's using that." The crew members who had seen that scene before were surprised, and even Luffy looked on with a raised eyebrow as the entire horizon trembled after Shirahoshi made her call. Around the forest, a huge shadow began to emerge from the water, and before Ryokazu could react, the sea rose between the forest and began to cover it. "What is this?" Ryokazu was scared. "We should get out of here," Luffy said, seeing that they would also be enveloped by the shadow. He used his increased speed and grabbed the mermaid by the waist with a cry of surprise, and started kicking everyone's butt so they flew to the ship like projectiles while screaming. Luffy ended up leaving last with Shirahoshi. The shadow began to rise, and Luffy escaped before he and Shirahoshi were swallowed. "A monster!" Bippo shouted from the ship, seeing how it was insignificant compared to that. Everyone was also stunned, even those who wanted to scold Luffy for receiving his kick in their buttocks. In the end, a huge sea monster swallowed Ryokazu's forest without catching the black pearl. Luffy looked at the creature with a huge eye, making even Laboon, who was already large, seem small. The monster looked back, mainly at the mermaid, who looked at it with curiosity. "Thank you for coming. Now you can go back," Shirahoshi exclaimed, and Luffy frowned. After all, they almost got swallowed too. The Sea King seemed to listen to Shirahoshi, and the next moment, returned to the sea, generating a huge wave, but without harming anyone else. Luffy returned to the deck, landing softly in the middle while everyone gathered. The ship was still rocking from the turbulent sea, but soon it was calming down. "I won the competition, didn't I?" Shirahoshi had a victorious smile, one that not even her friend Megalo could share, since this innocent mermaid had awakened her power that had swallowed at least 200 meters of forest along with a man who could be classified as a Navy admiral. "I guess so," Luffy answered, letting her go, and looked at everyone. Reiju was scratching her butt while looking at him grumpily along with Kuina and Nami. "Well, I guess we better continue our journey. It seems we won't be seeing Forest Man anytime soon, if he survives, that is," Luffy said awkwardly, and everyone went back to their journey to Water 7. Chapter 217, Water 701. In a location in the Grand Line, more than halfway across, a large structure stood in the sea. Water 7 was a unique place among all the seas. The city pulled water from the sea and threw it upwards like a colossal fountain. With the water falling back down, it quickly began to run through the city, passing through the streets as it made its way back to meet the sea. Despite having salt water running through its streets, the houses did not seem to be damaged by the salt in the air, made of materials that could resist the corrosion caused by constant exposure to salt and humidity. This is possible through the use of materials like corrosion-resistant fiber-reinforced concrete, stainless steel, and other special alloys. The structure was not only known for its iconic shape that stood out, but the true specialty of the place was its famous shipbuilding, as great ships left its docks, sailing the seven seas and being recognized all over the world. The shipyards of Water 7 were composed of various key facilities, each playing a vital role in ship construction. Among these structures were dry docks, specialized areas where ships were built or repaired, equipped with gates that could be closed to drain the water and make room for work on the ship's hulls below the waterline. Carpentry workshops. In these workshops, skilled craftsmen worked with wood to create the skeleton and cladding of the ships. They used resistant and treated woods to ensure the durability and resistance of the ships to adverse maritime conditions. Furnaces and foundries, spaces dedicated to molding and forging metals. Here, metals were transformed into essential parts for the structure of the ships, such as nails, chains, anchors, and reinforcement plates. Sail and rigging workshops, places where sails were carefully sewn and rigging was braided. The quality of the sails and ropes was fundamental for navigation, requiring resistant materials that could withstand strong winds and salt erosion. Naval design studios. Here, naval architects and engineers worked together on the design of the ships, ensuring that they were not only robust and safe but also efficient and aesthetically pleasing. Supply warehouses, large deposits where construction materials, tools, and supplies necessary for the construction and maintenance of the ships were stored. These warehouses ensured that all necessary materials were always available. Testing and launch areas, spaces along the coast where ships were launched into the sea for the first time. These areas allowed for buoyancy, stability, and performance tests before the ships were delivered to their owners. Administration offices, where all aspects of shipbuilding were coordinated, from hiring workers to project management and contact with clients. With all this, countless companies were in constant activity in the city. Among them, there was one that was more required, since its owner was the most important person in the city, besides already having a great fame for ending all outlaws that approach. At this place, a commotion was already happening. "Give us the ship for free, otherwise, we will kill everyone." A pirate holding a gun, pointing at a blonde woman spoke. "You should take it, that was our agreement." A blue-haired man spoke, narrowing his eyes. "We paid half the value of the ship. But the other half will be for free." The pirate spoke, and his other 20 companions shouted, "That's it," while pointing their firearms at the company. The name of this company was Galley Law Company, led by the mayor himself, the blue-haired man named Iceberg. The person who had the pistol pointed at her was Mia Khalifa, Iceberg's personal secretary, who looked at the gun with disdain, not caring about it. "You better lower that, otherwise, I will make you regret being born." She spoke in a threatening tone. "What did you say, woman? You have a gun pointed at you at this moment, so shut up." The pirate spoke angrily. Iceberg saw this and sighed. "You really aren't going to pay, are you?" he said calmly. "Of course not." The pirate spoke, and in the next moment, Khalifa kicked him with a powerful kick, sending him a few meters away while the other pirates were surprised, but not for long, because at that moment, the carpenters who had just been watching while everyone pointed their guns at them began to act. The pirates didn't even have time as they were kicked by all of them, and Iceberg just watched the pirates being beaten up by everyone. What? The pirates were surprised to see their companions being beaten so easily while they began to point their guns. Bang! 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 They kept shooting, but the members of the Galley Law Company were much more than simple builders, dodging bullets while punching and kicking all the pirates who tried this scam. It didn't take long for all the pirates to be on the ground, beaten, and knocked out. "Take their weapons and tie them up, we should call the Navy, let's auction their ship, since they're not going to pay the other half, we'll get the money at the auction." Iceberg commented, and everyone nodded. "Did you see that?" the citizens shouted, watching the show from outside. "Yes, they are unbeatable, as expected of the mayor." Another spoke. "Iceberg Sama." Some women screamed. This was the atmosphere of the upper part of the city, but this could not summarize Water 7 as a whole, because on a beach at the lowest point of the city fountain, there was a dump with everything people threw away, mainly from ships that were destroyed and parts that had to be replaced and disposed of the old ones. Everything was accumulated on this side of the beach. "Come on, we should throw this ugly ship's bow away," said a man who worked at a construction company on the lower side of the city. "This thing, who makes something like this?" The other murmured, looking at the sculpture that was the beak of a ship. "You had to see the person who was the captain of this, he was crazy." The other murmured. "I don't doubt it, who puts a person wearing a straw hat on the bow of the ship? It even looks like that pirate who is becoming famous." The other commented as they strained to move that bow. They had to throw it in the lower part of the city, on the beach, so they carried the pieces to the edge of the place and pushed for it to fall. Ha ha ha. This man had green hair and he seemed to be really a fan of that pirate, but he didn't have much experience at sea and almost sank, so he had to change the mast. "He went crazy when we couldn't make a ship's bow like it and he had to use another from our stock." The man laughed, commenting on what happened. "Whatever, let's keep pushing this thing." They nodded and threw that bow off the edge, and it fell straight onto the beach. As soon as they did that, they returned to their company to do their work, while the ship's bow fell among other debris. It didn't take long for a group of 3 men to see the ship's bow and look at it with interest from one side of the beach. "This looks good." One man spoke with satisfaction. "Frankie is going to love this." Another said while the last one just nodded. Then climbing onto the debris, they began to remove that ship's bow and loaded it onto a cart they brought. As soon as they fitted it into the cart, they began to take the ship's part to one side of the beach. They arrived at a corner of the beach where there was a house with neons, titled Frankie's house. After pushing the cart to the entrance, they entered and saw Frankie drinking his cola. "Frankie, we found something you're going to be interested in," said the man. "What would that be?" Frankie, wearing only his swim trunks, said with interest. "Come see." His subordinate spoke, and Frankie followed him outside. "What is this?" Frankie was shocked by the mast. "Did you like it?" said a man waiting for a positive response. "Of course not. You idiot." Frankie spoke loudly. "This is nothing super perverted." He spoke with disappointment, still wondering who would use a ship's bow in that way, looking at the image of the man with the straw hat crookedly. "Forget it, just leave it aside, it's not enough for the super ship I'm planning to make," he said as the man grew disheartened, and Frankie went back inside to drink more cola, still hoping for an opportunity to create his perfect ship. Meanwhile, at the port, the workers continued their service, hammering the wood of the ships. The day was quite peaceful, with no one in this city expecting what would happen next because at sea, a small shadow appeared on the horizon. Why do I feel something strange when I look at that ship so far away? One of the working men murmured, seeing the small shadow. Hey, Lucas. What are you doing? Keep hammering that mast. Another man warned. Wait, can you get the magnifying glass? I want to see who is coming to town. The same man said. Why do you want to see a new visitor? It doesn't matter who it is, if it's a pirate, Iceberg can deal with him with his men. But it's strange. I feel something wrong with that ship. Can you get the magnifying glass? The man insisted. What a pain, Lucas. He complained and went to the side of the ship under construction, picking up the magnifying glass on the table. Let me see what kind of ship is scaring Lucas so much. The man said disdainfully as he prepared to laugh at his friend while pointing the magnifying glass to the sea, expecting to see a random pirate. What is that? The distant shadow finally seemed clear to him, and he saw a large black ship coming at high speed to the city, its flag making him lose the sensation of standing on the ground, because that ship was not just any pirate, but a super crew with more than 2 billion for all their heads. Who wouldn't recognize that flag in this part of the sea and not pee in fear? Now that infamous pirate group causing chaos in the world was coming to Water 7. Hey, man, are you okay? Lucas, the simple worker, saw his friend paralyzed on the spot. The man looked at him with a pale face. We must warn the city. The straw hats are coming here. The man with the magnifying glass shouted, not only catching Lucas by surprise but all the workers on the ship, who immediately stopped what they were doing after hearing this. The straw hats? They are coming here? We must warn the city. Run. We must flee. Call the marine, report our situation. That ship was just the beginning of the chaos that would follow in Water 7. At sea, the Black Pearl continued sailing towards the city with force. All the straw hats were looking at the structure somehow, some enchanted by the city, others with a neutral tone, some hoping to find a fight. Luffy was in the middle of all this just smiling. After all, he had more people to capture in the city. Since I'm here, let's start a call to begin negotiating. Luffy said, taking a den-den-mushi out of his pocket and started dialing a specific number. Chapter 218, Water 702. The Black Pearl was getting ever closer to its next stop, slicing through the sea but without the rush Luffy usually imposed on the ship with his power. Luffy, the town seems to already know we're coming. Usopp said, using a technological lens on his eye after Luffy passed on a Vegapunk project for the sniper to create with the doctor in Skypiea. It was an item he had only finished a few days ago, and Usopp could now see things from afar much faster than by looking through a magnifying glass. Let them, we can't do anything about it, after all, we are a superpower in the sea, it's normal to arrive anywhere and scare people. Luffy commented. Are we scary now, Luffy-sama? Shirahoshi seemed horrified by this. We are pirates, I guess it's very normal. Vivi commented on the side. Anyway. Luffy commented and looked at Hugo. I need you to hunt someone down in that city. Luffy said and began to explain. He is not hard to find, he's at a bar as the owner, his hair is iconic with two looking like horns, he uses the power of the door fruit, so you have to be faster than him as soon as he sees you as a threat, got it? Luffy laid out the instructions on how to capture Wait no. That will be easy, Captain. Hugo spoke calmly. That's good. Luffy nodded and turned his attention to his pocket, where he took out his den-den-mushi. Dialing a call, the phone started ringing. Ketcha. Hello. A familiar voice came from the other side. Hello, Grandpa. Luffy said calmly. Luffy. You damn brat. Where are you now? Garp demanded immediately. I'm missing you, can a grandson call to ask how you are? Luffy asked. You think you can catch me with that again? The den-den-mushi screamed, but there was a blush knowing Garp was holding back. Listen here, you irresponsible brat, how am I? Garp suddenly stopped. He was going to say great-grandchildren, but he hid that from someone in the middle of the call when he was about to pronounce those words, Luffy thought and gave a small smile. So you're in front of Sengoku, aren't you? That's good, I need to talk to him. Luffy said with Garp's silence. Give me that, Garp. Sengoku, not knowing why Garp did not continue, asked for the den-den-mushi. Pirate Monkey D. Luffy. Sengoku shouted into the den-den-mushi, while Luffy's crew was all listening to the conversation in silence. Hello, Sengoku. It's good to talk to you. Luffy smiled. You have a 7 warlords of the seas still in captivity. You better release him immediately, otherwise, I will send the entire force of the navy to catch you. Sengoku immediately threatened him. Good that you brought that up. Luffy said. Let's negotiate, after all, the capture of a 7 warlords of the seas is not your only concern. Luffy spoke mysteriously, making Sengoku have a bad feeling and growl. What do you mean? He asked cautiously. Give me a few minutes. Luffy spoke and turned to Hugo. Hugo, grab that man I asked for. You can stop at the harbor and enjoy the city, but we will leave in a few days. After all, we have a big negotiation with the Navy. Luffy spoke and quickly jumped into the air with Hugo following him and flew towards Water 7 immediately. They raced through the air, without the city realizing that Luffy was already arriving before his ship. By this time people were already spreading the shocking news of a 750 million pirate approaching the city. What are we going to do? Screamed a woman. Notify the mayor immediately. Should we call the Navy? People screamed in fear. Luffy was portrayed as a bloodthirsty demon that destroyed entire islands and thousands of people paid with their lives when that happened. Everyone in the city was seeking shelters, workers left the docks, citizens docked in houses closing all doors. Iceberg frowned as soon as he heard about the Straw Hat Pirates approaching the city, while his employees looked on, some with a look of fear. 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 Rob Lucci's pigeon said scared while he frowned. After all, even Cypher Paul 9 agent had to recognize Luffy's strength as depicted in the newspapers. Which of them could deal with a power that could devastate an island? Even the talented Rob Lucci had doubts. Rob Lucci exchanged glances with the other members as they pondered what to do. What should we do, Iceberg? Polly raised a question while everyone was silent. Let's stay calm. If we need to deal with them causing trouble, we should try to stop them. Iceberg said. You talk as if we're dealing with ordinary pirates. You know we can't face those pirates. Have you seen what they can turn into in the newspaper? Polly said in frustration. Even so, we can't let them destroy Water 7. Khalifa, contact the Navy immediately. Iceberg said. However, something happened. As they were discussing, a high-speed meteor fell from the sky, exploding the ground in front of the company, while everyone quickly went on alert. From the debris, Luffy emerged with his cape fluttering, flaunting his symbol while smiling at them with the Dendenmushi still in his hand. He looked at Iceberg and the others as if they were his prey, while they all frowned at this pirate arriving in such a manner. Meanwhile, on the other side of the town, in a specific bar, Bueno was somewhat cautious. The city had plunged into chaos, and his customers quickly ran to their homes intending to hide. Some even went to the port to flee the place. He was wondering whether he should wait to see what happened or go after the others. This might compromise our disguise. I should stay here and wait for things to calm down. He decided in the end. After all, his mission had been carried out for years. He wouldn't like to lose it at this moment with uncertainty. However, at that moment, he heard the bar's doorbell opening and was surprised to see a large man entering. He was a member of Cypher Paul 9 agent. He had to be aware of all possible information, and it wasn't hard to realize that this man was Hugo, one of the Straw Hat Pirates. Hugo looked at him and soon began to move towards the counter. Bueno just tried to appear calm as he watched him approaching. Hugo simply sat at the counter and looked at him. Give me your best loot, he said, and Bueno nodded, taking a bottle with a glass while pouring the alcohol into the glass and placing it on the table for Hugo to drink. Bueno could feel a pressure, indicating that something bad might happen, but he kept as calm as he could. Hugo picked up the glass and drank calmly. As soon as he finished, downing it all in one gulp, he looked at the bartender. You know, when my captain asked me to look for a man with cow-like hair and named Bueno, I didn't expect to find him in the first bar I entered. I guess I'm a lucky man. Hugo spoke with a small smile. Bueno just looked at him for a while, his demeanor appearing almost calm, but inside he was nervous. He stared at Hugo for a few seconds while the man gazed back with a smile. Bueno moved his finger, and a door materialized beside him. However, as he was about to touch the doorknob, a huge hand grabbed him by the neck, breaking the counter while Hugo appeared in front of him. Bueno immediately spat saliva and could no longer move as he felt his breathing stop with the grip on his neck. Sorry, but my order is to capture you. My captain asked for it, and I don't intend to disappoint him. Hugo commented calmly. Bueno, unable to do anything to escape the grip on his neck as his body was lifted, pointed his finger at Hugo's head, launching a finger pistol. A small impact was heard, while Hugo just calmly looked at the finger. He didn't even need to use hockey to defend himself because it didn't even tickle his skin hardened by the Titan. Hugo just smiled and raised another hand, slapping the man, making some teeth come out of his mouth as he fainted with a swollen and bleeding face after receiving just one slap. As soon as Hugo saw him passed out, he shrugged, took the bottle that had been served from the stock, and left drinking while dragging the man. His door created by the devil fruit had already disappeared. As Hugo left the bar and jumped into the air to find his captain, Luffy was staring down all the men of the Galley Law Company. Answer me, Monkey D. Luffy. What do you mean by that? Sengoku shouted into the Dendenmushi, since Luffy had yet to respond to him. Simple, Sengoku. Luffy ignored the men in front of him, smiling at the Den Mushi. Because I'm in Water 7, you know what that means? He said calmly. Sengoku was silent for a while, until he spoke again. No. You can't be serious. Sengoku could not believe what he was hearing. How did Monkey D. Luffy have such precious information? I'm now capturing the entire Cypher Pol 9 agent, so you better give me a fair value for the exchange. Luffy said, smiling. Silence took over the place. Iceberg was trying to understand what was happening, while the Cypher Pol 9 agent members themselves were quite alarmed now. Lucci immediately looked at the other Cypher Pol 9 agent members, knowing their cover was blown and they were about to act, but before they could, Luffy released his Conqueror's Haki, which immediately flew out in all directions at that dock. Do you think I'll let you escape so easily? Luffy asked while seeing everyone feel the pressure of his king. Immediately everyone began to kneel, unable to handle his current strength. You are a little better, but still, you're weak. Is this the talent of the best talent to emerge in 500 years in Cypher Pol? Luffy said as yellow lightning covered the dock and his gaze went to Rob Lucci kneeling with one knee and trying to fight against the pressure. How do you know all this? How do you know us, pirate? Rob spoke with difficulty while growling, but he could not move. Luffy was extremely strong here. Iceberg, kneeling with the others who didn't know the true identity of the Cypher Pol 9 agents, were shocked to hear Rob Lucci speak for the first time, since he had always been mute and his pigeon spoke for him. Luffy didn't immediately respond and looked at all the people kneeling at the site, making sure none fainted yet. He looked amused especially at the agents of the feared Cypher Pol 9 agent, appearing just weak while they couldn't even deal with his Conqueror's Haki. Luffy originally couldn't even deal with them at this part of the journey. This shows the difference between my current crew and the original Straw Hat members when they landed in Water 7. Luffy couldn't help but compare his strength, satisfied. You hear that, Sengoku? I'm capturing all the members of the Cypher Pol 9 agent. I'll be in touch soon so we can negotiate my terms. Luffy said. You bastard. Sengoku shouted angrily, but Luffy simply hung up the Den Mushi, cutting off his voice. He now had to deal with his new prisoners. Chapter 219, Water 703. Garp. Your grandson is causing trouble again. Sengoku growled at Garp, still in the room. Luffy. Garp growled silently, but couldn't say more. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to inform the government that your plan, made many years ago, placing agents in Water 7, has just been destroyed. You can imagine how furious they will be about this, can't you? Sengoku said, and Garp just nodded grumpily without even picking up his Den Mushi again. Sengoku then picks up another Den Mushi and starts calling the 5 elders, already knowing what would happen next. Meanwhile, in Water 7, Luffy was looking at all the Galley Law Company workers kneeling under his pressure. What are you doing? The man with blue hair finally spoke through gritted teeth. Luffy turned to him, who was standing next to a blonde woman dressed like a secretary. With an even wider smile, Luffy spoke. So you're Iceberg? How interesting to meet like this. Well, as you can see, you have 3 government agents infiltrated in your company. I'm just capturing them, since the government will have to pay a good price for their heads. Luffy said. What do you mean by that, pirate? A blonde man growled, wanting to shut Luffy's mouth, not believing his words. Meanwhile, Rob Lucci, Kiku, and Califa were actually frowning at this moment. No matter what you think. Luffy ignored him and went to Rob Lucci using sea-stone handcuffs reinforced that could even limit the physical strength and haki of the prisoner. I know you can transform into a tiger, seems like a waste of your talent with a common zone fruit. Maybe the government is afraid of you, that's why they gave you such a fruit. Anyway, you're not my opponent, so just stay quiet like a little kitty. He said his arrogant words while the pigeon was already passed out on the floor, notwithstanding the pressure, and Rob Lucci just looked at Luffy with hatred. He put the handcuffs on Rob Lucci's arm, preventing him from transforming and even using the 6 styles. Luffy finished by slapping the man on the head, making him fall down passed out, while Kiku and Califa had dazed eyes and a glint of fear with what was happening. Now it's your turn. Luffy said, approaching Kiku, still looking at him fearfully. What do you think you're doing, pirate? The carpenters were angry at Luffy while he continued putting the handcuffs and slapping Kiku on the head, making him also pass out. What do you mean by government agent? Iceberg commented, still kneeling, looking at his 2 employees fallen on the ground passed out, still not believing Luffy's words. You've been investigated for years, Iceberg. Luffy now said, approaching him. You think the government, after Tom's death, would give up on the Pluton project? You're a fool if you think so. Luffy spoke, getting closer. What? Iceberg now said, alarmed, knowing what that meant. Yes, you had agents looking for those blueprints all the time, closer than you could imagine, but you were lucky that the project isn't with you all the time, isn't it? Luffy spoke, opening another smile, leaving Iceberg even more stunned. How do you know this? How did you know there was an agent here? And what proof do you have that they are really what they are? He demanded in a dark tone. You're not in a position to demand anything from me, Mayor of Water 7. Luffy spoke with a tone of disdain. What are you doing? Iceberg asked, seeing Luffy above him and moving his hand. I'm taking your secretary, he said, grabbing Califa's arm. What are you doing? Pirate. She exclaimed angrily, but Luffy gave her a slight tap on the head, causing her to faint the next moment. You see, I have 3 agents from the famous Cypher Paul 9 agent, something that makes me proud. Luffy celebrated as he put another pair of handcuffs on Califa and placed her with the other agents. At that moment, a heavy landing was heard, and Hugo appeared carrying a fainted Bueno. Bueno? Some of the workers knew the bar owner and were surprised to see him being captured like this. Nodding with satisfaction, Luffy said. Good, put these on him. He threw the handcuffs to Hugo, who quickly placed them on Bueno before tossing him among the others. Luffy stopped releasing his haki and turned his attention to the Den Mushi. Making a call in front of everyone, who still couldn't move. Hello. Luffy heard the frustrated voice of Sengoku on the other side, confirming that the Den Mushi was still with the fleet admiral. Hello, Sengoku, I have Rob Lucci, Kaku, Califa, and Bueno captured in front of me. Luffy announced, and Iceberg couldn't help but look stunned. If Luffy's words were indeed true, the one speaking would confirm it at this moment. How much do you want for them? And Doflamingo with the member of Kaido's crew? Sengoku did not deny, still with a frustrated voice. They were agents all this time? Iceberg looked stunned at the 4 captives, but something else also bothered him more. This pirate knew that the Pluton blueprints were not with him, meaning he also knew they were with Frankie. Pirate or government, he could not let what Tom sacrificed his life to protect fall into their hands. The pirate from Kaido is non-negotiable, but I want 3 billion for their lives. Luffy declared. Impossible, 1 billion, we are willing to pay that at most. Sengoku declared. 2 billion, otherwise you won't see them until you accept this amount. Luffy decreed. Sengoku was silent for a while, until he spoke. Alright. 2 billion, the exchange will be in Water 7. He said. No, the exchange will be in Eni's lobby. Luffy said, knowing that this negotiation would not be peaceful, a conflict could destroy Water 7, so even though he was a pirate, he didn't want to see this place destroyed. Alright. In Eni's lobby. Sengoku thought in the same line of reasoning and accepted, seeing that the judicial island was close to Water 7. That's good, then we'll talk in 4 days. I hope to see this money at the meeting. Luffy said and hung up the Den Mushi. Luffy turned his attention back to his audience on the ground. Some people were watching from outside the company at this moment, terrified to see the city's great heroes fallen on the ground while the pirates seemed to do as they pleased. You see, Mayor. You had government agents right here, we'll be taking them, and we'll spend a few days in this place. We won't cause any more trouble in the city, so don't bother us during our stay. Luffy said. What are you planning? Iceberg asked cautiously. After all, Luffy still had information about the Pluton blueprints, and Luffy was no longer even concerned with him or asking about their location, proof that this pirate really knew where they were. I'm going to see a future Nakama of my crew. Luffy said and returned to Hugo. Can you take them to put in the ship's prison? Tell the others they have 4 days to enjoy the city. Luffy said, and Hugo nodded, taking the bunch of them and leaping into the air to descend to the city. They took them. Some workers murmured still on the ground, still processing that their friends of years were government agents. After all, they couldn't go against the interest of the fleet admiral and this 750 million bounty pirate. So, I'm off. You can tell the city that we won't cause trouble. My companions like to explore places and will respect your laws if not provoked. Luffy spoke and started to walk away. Wait. You're going to the junkyard, aren't you? Iceberg exclaimed with a nervous heart, knowing he would lose Tom's blueprints. Don't worry, soon, those blueprints will no longer exist. Luffy said and disappeared, flying towards the junkyard. At the Frankie house, the news about the Straw Hats finally reached them. Frankie. The city is in danger. Some men from his gang who were in the city arrived yelling scared while opening the door. What now? Can't you see I'm drinking my cola? If it's to show me another ridiculous ship figurehead, I swear I'll hit you. Frankie growled. No. The Straw Hats are coming to Water 7. The city is in danger. They finally clarified their fears. That crew? Frankie also got a bit scared, after all, who didn't know Luffy and his crew after they went devastating several islands in the Grand Line. What, Monkey D. Luffy, the man who can defeat 3 warlords, 1 vice admiral, and a 4 emperors is calamity. We're screwed. Frankie's people immediately became scared, running in panic. What if he turns into a monster like in the newspaper? Someone spoke in horror. However, at that moment, the door opened with someone kicking it in. Black Pearl was now arriving at the port. Seeing this person there, they became even more alarmed, wondering what he was doing here. Luffy had finally arrived, and he looked at the perverted cyborg with his mouth open and eyes wide, since his hat was unique. "I heard you guys have a good stock of cola here, can I try some?" Luffy said, since in this world there was no Coca-Cola, a product he hadn't eaten in a long time, so this famous cola that Frankie drinks piqued his interest. No one answered, in fact, no one could breathe, while Luffy walked into the place with a characteristic smile. Chapter 220, Water 704. Luffy continued walking until he reached where Frankie was, looking at him cautiously. He said nothing as he walked. It was only when he sat down in front of the famous bully known throughout Water 7 that he greeted him. "So you're the famous Frankie," he said and continued. "Like you, my name is Monkey D. Luffy. Do you mind if I drink your cola?" Luffy suggested and didn't even wait for the other's response before grabbing the cola bottle and bringing it to him. The place was in utter silence, as everyone watched Luffy taking the bottle and opening it with the sound of gas. Nobody moved a muscle. It didn't seem any more like they were in a bustling place like the Frankie house. After all, who would dare breathe in the presence of this monster? Luffy drank the cola calmly, not caring about what was happening around him. "You know, this is a bit disappointing. I was expecting a different taste. This seems more like Pepsi," Luffy murmured with a tone of dissatisfaction. "Still, it's a nostalgic taste," he said, drinking the rest of the container. "Ah." He released the gas-filled breath and turned back to the pervert in front of him. "I just made a visit with your friend, Iceberg. A very nice guy, however, naive. I took some of his staff." "Iceberg?" Frankie finally snapped out of his shock upon hearing Luffy's words. "What did you do to him?" he asked worriedly. "I did nothing to him, but there were some government agents looking for a kind of weapon. They hoped Iceberg had it." Luffy gave a small smile, while Frankie began to sweat. "It's a shame they looked in the wrong place, isn't it?" When Luffy said these words, a deadly silence took over the place more than ever. Frankie seemed to have lost his footing at that moment, paralyzed by Luffy's words. After all, what was being discussed was the Pluton plans with him at that moment. A moment passed and Frankie finally made a move, jumping back. "I will never hand this over to you," he said, gaining some courage, and pointed his arm with a barrel in the middle of the palm at Luffy, who just looked amused at the cyborg. Before Frankie could shoot at Luffy, a hand grabbed him by the neck, lifting him off the ground while Luffy was already in front of him like a kitten. "You know you can't resist this," he said calmly as Frankie struggled to break free. "Boss Frankie." His companions at the site shouted desperately at that. "We should stop him." One spoke up quickly. "Even if we die here, we'll fight," another said. Luffy was not bothered by them, and around him, a wave of hockey was released, making everyone there faint the next moment. Frankie, already scared, became even more alarmed seeing all his colleagues fallen on the ground, with no one else conscious. Luffy used his free hand to open the cyborg's elbow, while he struggled, but in vain. Luffy took the papers inside him and threw him on the ground the next moment. Frankie fell stunned, looking fearfully at Luffy as he looked at the papers. "Let's at least read this," Luffy thought, and used his more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, to read everything quickly in less than 20 seconds and memorize everything. He at least wanted to understand a bit about this weapon. It might be useful for him to do some things with this information. He didn't intend to build a second Pluton. After all, there's already one under Wano, and if his theory was correct, the key to activating the military ship, which should be considered a nuclear ship, would somehow be Vivi. After all, everything indicates that the Nefertari blood has to do with the weapon. But Luffy is still curious about the weapon's skeleton and how it works. He finished reading and looked at Frankie, still glaring at him with clenched teeth. "This weapon is too dangerous to keep. You should have destroyed it a long time ago," he concluded, and picked up a Den Mushi, pointing the Den Mushi at the paper while he dialed. "Sengoku, send this video to the world government. Your chances of getting your hands on Pluton end here," he said, and the papers in his hand quickly caught fire, disappearing into ashes. Luffy looked satisfied and hung up the Den Mushi. This call would be sent, and using his intuition, he could tell what he did was indeed real. "You see, Frankie, I just did something that could have ended your life," Luffy said, crossing his arms to the man still on the ground. "You destroyed all the plans," he murmured in disbelief. After all, he could not believe that Luffy had absorbed it all. "Yes. Now let's see the others. I have to introduce you to your new crewmates," Luffy said. "What do you mean by that?" He didn't finish when Luffy grabbed him by the clothes and started to leave, while Frankie tried once more to get out of his grip. At least it wasn't by the neck now. "Hey, answer me." Why are you carrying me like this? Frankie tried to speak, but Luffy ignored him while kicking the exit door and flying into the air, heading towards the port. The city is quite empty. I guess that's normal due to our reputation, but it's kind of boring. It's not like we were going to destroy every place we dock. Luffy commented, looking at the closed houses, feeling all the people in the city scared of them. He went towards the Black Pearl anchoring in the port at that moment and approached in the air. Let me go. No, don't let me go, because I don't want to fall from this height, but put me on the ground. Frankie screamed as he was carried. His crew looked towards the screams in the air and saw Luffy landing on the deck with a man in swimwear, floral clothing, and blue hair. Luffy, what is this? Vivi asked, wanting to understand. This is our new companion, just like Enel, he will be our engineer. Luffy said with a small smile. Who said I'm your engineer? Frankie shouted with a comical face after hearing that, despite the scare he took. Companion? This is just a pervert. Nami crossed her arms and looked suspicious. Thanks for the superior compliment. Frankie seemed happy with that. That was not a compliment. Nami shouted with a comical face. Luffy. What have you brought to the crew now? Nami commented on the side with eyes on the captain. Don't worry, he is trustworthy. Despite being a weakling now, he can be very strong in the future. Luffy slapped Frankie on the back, who was getting up from the ground, making him fly with Luffy's slap going towards the ship's door. At that moment, Hugo appeared opening the door and saw a man in swimwear flying towards him while screaming. He looked strangely at that and kicked the man, who flew before hitting the mast and falling unconscious. Did you kill him? Usopp shouted, stunned. He's our crewmate. He is injured. Call a doctor. Chopper was scared. Wolf. Wolf. Chouchou barked. Ah, that's right. I'm a doctor. Chopper said and went to treat Frankie. Ha 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 ha. It's good that we're still in a good mood. Luffy laughed seeing this interaction and turned back to Hugo. How are our prisoners? Placed in their cells, no chance of escaping. He said, and Luffy nodded. Luffy. I wanted to see this city, but... where is everybody? Yuta said, pointing to the empty city. It seems the world is afraid of us. So it's better to get used to it. Told the mayor we're going to stay a few days and we don't intend to cause trouble unless necessary. Soon the city will function again. Luffy said. So I would like to see this place. Robin commented. Yes, I also want to see. I haven't seen a city like this. Shirahoshi shouted excitedly. You all can go, as Hugo said, we have 4 days. I'll deal with Frankie, you can do whatever you want. Luffy said and went to the cyborg all bandaged up by Chopper. Seeing this, many of the crew decided to head to the city, especially the women going to clothing stores and riding carts through the city's rivers, while Zoro, Kuina, and Chouchou stayed with Luffy, some to train and others to sleep as Luffy saw Chouchou lying on the deck peacefully. Luffy approached the bandaged Frankie and slapped him on the head. I swear I had a strange dream that I was kidnapped by a pirate and he made me join his crew. He murmured, waking up, but seeing Luffy in front of him, he started to sweat. Yo. He said with a small smile. What do you want? I'm not going to join your crew. Frankie spoke firmly. You know you don't have a choice, you were with the Pluton plans. Do you really think the government won't go after you after knowing this, hoping you read the contents that Tom sacrificed his life to protect? Luffy asked calmly, and Frankie seemed to clench his teeth. They wouldn't do that. Frankie spoke, and Luffy wanted to laugh at him. Yes, they would, trust me, I have many crew members who hate them to a degree that even scares me. Luffy joked, but there were some whose hatred surprised him after what they had been through, and he didn't blame them. Why do you want me to go with you? Frankie asked sincerely. He didn't seem to see much value in himself as this pirate looked at him. After all, this crew was made of monsters, he would be a useless guy. Don't underestimate your value, Frankie. You have potential, more important than your strength, is your talent. You can come on our journey, we need good engineers. Look at this ship, wouldn't you like to study it? Luffy suggested, pointing to the Black Pearl. He would be lying if he said he wasn't enchanted by this ship, which had already appeared in the newspaper a few times with its name. Looking closely, it was quite impressive with its 50 meters. Moreover, wouldn't you like to build a ship for me? I need someone to make a secondary ship for the crew. Can you make this ship for me? I'm willing to provide all sorts of material, how about it? Luffy asked, and Frankie finally had a positive look. I can build a ship for you? Frankie was surprised. After all, no one wanted his skills, and he ended up being a gangster in Water 7. If this pirate wants his work, this is an opportunity for him to fulfill his dream of building the perfect ship. Chapter 221, Water 705. This? Iceberg exclaimed, bewildered as he watched what was happening in front of him. Usopp. Hand me the tool. Frankie shouted as Hugo lifted a huge base of atom wood, the most durable in the known world, effortlessly while they used a construction base next to Black Pearl to make what Luffy believed to be the Sunny Go. Iceberg was worried about what could have happened to Frankie, so he immediately went to his house, concerned that Monkey D. Luffy would get his hands on the plans for Pluton, and became even more scared when he saw that Luffy had arrived there and kidnapped Frankie. However, as soon as he went to the dock where the pirate ship was, he came across a strange scene. Frankie was commanding the construction of a ship at that very moment. As an experienced shipbuilder after years of learning with Tom before even creating his own company, he could identify all those materials they were using. Luffy bought them through his store, spending a bit of his money, but for a good use. Luffy had called some of his companions for the construction of a new ship as soon as he planned with Frankie what the ship would be like. The male members were interested, and the place was filled by Ecchi, Vippo, Usopp, Hugo, Chopper, and even Zoro, who came at Luffy's call. "This will be super cool!" Frankie shouted excitedly. "Frankie!" Iceberg couldn't help but call out to his old friend. "Iceberg?" Frankie looked towards the mayor and smiled as he jumped from the skeleton of the ship to approach the old acquaintance. "Look at this, Iceberg. I'm building the perfect ship," he declared, pointing to the straw hats working. Iceberg frowned. "What do you mean by building a perfect ship? And the blueprints, that pirate knew you had them, didn't he?" he said nervously, not caring that Luffy might be listening to their whole conversation. "About that? Yes, he took them." Frankie spoke, scratching his head. "What? And now you're working with them? How does that make sense? We can't let the blueprints fall into the hands of a pirate." Iceberg practically begged. "About that, the pirate destroyed them in front of me. And now I can't stay here. The government will come after me as soon as they find out I had the blueprints," he said. "What do you mean?" Iceberg was surprised that Luffy destroyed them. At least it was better that these blueprints no longer existed than someone having them with the intention of using them, but was surprised by Frankie saying he could no longer stay. "I'm leaving, it's complicated, but I've become a pirate of the Straw Hats and will be departing with them soon," he said. It's not like he accepted it right away, but Luffy convinced him, seeing that he could be pursued, and now he was realizing his dream. "You can't be serious." What shocked Iceberg the most wasn't the fact that Luffy knew the location of the blueprints, but how he convinced Frankie to join the pirates before even he could leave his company until he finally found him. "It's true, Frankie has a lot of potential." Luffy intervened with his calm and distant tone, causing Iceberg to frown. "He's a member of my crew now, so we'll take care of him," Luffy said calmly. Putting that aside, Luffy returned to the construction of the ship's skeleton. He saw someone approaching. "Master, you need me." Baby 5 approached in her maid dress. "Yes, I want you to use your power to weld some things here." Luffy pointed to some iron joining with the atom wood. "Then die." Baby 5, as always, changed her personality and pointed a missile at Luffy's head, making everyone look at them. The crew was already accustomed to this behavior and Luffy told everyone not to interfere since any joke the girl plays on him is useless. "If you shoot me, and it only affects me, it'll be fine, but if you destroy any part of this construction, I'll make you regret it," Luffy said calmly, looking at the missile in front of him, but his voice carried a threat that Baby 5 had never heard before. After all, he never really had to reprimand this woman. Baby 5, with a determined face, became a bit nervous at that and quickly transformed her hand back to normal, having a shy expression. "I'm sorry for upsetting you, Master. I'll do it right now," she said cheerfully in the end and went to weld what Luffy asked with one of her hands turning into a blowtorch. The construction on the ship continued. The girls walked around the town, but as the whole town was scared, almost no shop was open for them, so it was more of a sightseeing trip than a shopping spree. Many inhabitants came to Iceberg asking about the pirates' intentions. He ended up saying that as long as they don't cause trouble for them, they will be peaceful. The first day of construction was quite invigorating. The skeleton of the ship was all structured before the real construction began, thanks to the strength and power of the members. "This is super done," Frankie shouted with joy as he fitted the anti-arms in a characteristic pose of his. "Hey, how did you get him to join so quickly, Luffy?" You asked curiously. After all, that guy didn't seem very willing at the beginning to join the crew. "The husband knows how to use his charisma," Alvida said beside. "Amazing, Luffy-sama," Shirahoshi said. "Sharky. Let's celebrate with a feast," Luffy said as they prepared that dock into a big party. Far from the location, members of Frankie's gang looked on from a distance. "Frankie Aniki is in danger," said one. "I don't think so. Look at him." He pointed to Frankie jumping, drinking cola, and laughing, pointing at the ship. "What are we going to do?" said a woman with a black power hairstyle. "What if they've bewitched him or something?" said another woman identical to the last. Luffy looked at that group from a distance and returned to Frankie. "Frankie, Go talk to your people. I wouldn't like to receive an attack and destroy your precious ship. Luffy said. True, I'll talk to my super companions. He said, going to the location. You recruited him so quickly. Zoro approached with alcohol while Luffy was with Nojiko at his side. Ha ha ha. You're right, I thought it would be much more difficult, but in the end, we got our engineer. Luffy said, looking at the system in front of him. System, you have recruited Frankie as a member of your crew. Putting the system aside, Luffy continued with his crew while many people looked from afar at the pirates having a party, but no one approached. Frankie's group ended up joining them that night, after clearing things up. In the end, the feast grew, and Frankie's gang mingled with them for the rest of the night. The next day, Luffy returned to the work of the ship, and Iceberg appeared with his company. I didn't like how you did things, however, I still recognize that you helped us, so we will help you with the ship, if you don't mind. He said, and Luffy nodded. I still can't believe Lucci was a government agent, but I still recognize that you helped us. Polly said. The group also gathered around the skeleton of the ship, even Frankie's gang helped, while Frankie was the chief engineer who eventually gave way to Iceberg. In the town, citizens began to leave their houses, seeing that the pirates were just building a ship with the mayor and Frankie. Shops began to open, and the girls were able to enjoy their stay in the city better, but this could not be said for new visitors. As soon as they saw the characteristic black ship of the Straw Hats in the port, they turned ship to escape from that city. At the end of that day, another banquet was made by the crew. The routine continued and the city finally got used to the pirates and didn't seem to be afraid, although they trembled in fear when Nami asked for a discount in their shops, even making clothes or anything she wanted for free, making the navigator leave the shops very happy. This is the train Luffy-sama talked about. Shirahoshi pointed to a means of transport approaching the location. Luffy. Usopp approached, feeling something coming from that train. Yes, there's a government agent on that train to spy on us. Hugo, can you take him out? Luffy spoke calmly, sensing a very dark aura, probably an assassin, maybe even Cypher Paul Zero agent. Hugo, someone who enjoyed killing anyone related to the government, seemed happy with this kind of job and went into the city. After a while, there was a small explosion somewhere as Luffy carried wood for the ship, but he knew Hugo had done his job. Another day, an agent tried to approach using moonwalk. Usopp, take him down. Luffy said, and Usopp looked up at the blue sky before grabbing his gigantic rifle and shooting with his light power, killing the agent trying to infiltrate the city. Next time, let me handle them. Zoro complained in the end, having no chance to take care of any agents. But his chance was denied as on the last day, they were having a farewell party and, unexpectedly, the city joined them, eating and drinking merrily with the pirates. Our last day here, soon we will set off to the sea, as we have a big negotiation to make. Luffy declared and looked at the ship, which was still not ready and needed a few more days. Frankie will stay to meet up with us, Usopp and Popo. You can stay here and help him with the finishing touches and then meet up with us after an ice lobby. Luffy suggested, Usopp would be more useful here than on the legal island, and Popo could levitate the ship to catch up to them faster, not wanting the government to find out now that his crew possesses the power of the float fruit model, flying human devil fruit. Yes, Luffy. Yes, Captain. And those who have been with me since Alabasta, we haven't had a direct confrontation with the government together, but make no mistake. At an ice lobby, we will face some admirals and powerful forces, so prepare yourselves for this great meeting. Luffy announced, and those fascinated with fighting were happy to hear this. After all, it was a chance to show once again their growth, and the event with the Green Bull hadn't done that very well. Chapter 222, Preparations for Battle 01. Sengoku adjusted his cape, straightened his clothes underneath, ran his hand through his long beard, and adjusted his glasses by pressing them closer to his face with a finger. He looked into the mirror of his office and gazed at his reflection with satisfaction before turning around and beginning to leave the office. A group of soldiers was waiting for him as soon as he stepped out. Fleet Admiral. They saluted respectfully as their hands went to their foreheads while the other hand remained clenched into a fist behind their backs. Come on, we're already late. Sengoku spoke and continued down the hallway as the Navy soldiers followed closely behind. Is everyone already in the square? Sengoku asked along the way. Yes, Fleet Admiral Sengoku. One of them spoke. Then let's head there immediately. He said, and continuing their path through Manafort and descending the grand structure, they finally emerged from one of its exits, a special one leading to the execution platform in front of the entire square. However, today would not be a day for a public execution, as there was no prisoner to execute. Instead, the only being on that platform was an old man sitting at its edge, quietly eating his biscuit. Garp. Sengoku greeted as he approached with the sailors in tow. You've finally arrived. The sailors down there are getting restless waiting for you to show up. he said calmly while chewing on a new biscuit. Hand me that den den mushi, he said and took the den den mushi placed next to Garp. You locked this thing up. It was a good opportunity to share my jokes. My students would certainly love to hear them. Boo wah ha 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 ha. Garp laughed, spitting out his biscuit, which fell from that height, landing below and hitting a navy cap. The cap's owner was infuriated with the biscuit pieces falling on him, but he said nothing more while puffing on his cigarette. Akainu is getting furious with you, Sengoku pointed out. And that's exactly why I lock the microphone, so you don't end up embarrassing the Navy. Sengoku growled soon after. Ignoring Garp who laughed, he deactivated the microphone with a personal password and looked over all the men waiting for his speech. There were at least 10,000 sailors down there, all standing rigidly, with all the families of those sailors circling the square, bidding them farewell, as it might be the last time they would see each other. Sengoku took a deep breath and began to speak. Today, justice has gathered all of you here because it needs to put an end to a threat in these seas. Sengoku started. People in the middle of the crowd like Kobe, Helmpo, and even Monkey D. Lucy were listening attentively to Sengoku's speech. The Navy has been suffering great losses since this pirate group entered the East Blue, destroying Navy bases and killing its commanders, yet still coming out unscathed. He began and took out a paper with the entire history of their target. It started with branch base number 153, killing Captain Morgan. Helmpo shuddered upon hearing this. Then there was a major destruction in Orange Town. They attacked a sergeant destroying his ship at sea, and it didn't stop there. Base number 16 in the East Blue was also destroyed, killing Captain Nezumi as well. He continued as everyone listened and clenched their fists, with someone after doing all this, still roaming the seas, their blood screamed for justice. Sengoku also wouldn't say that Nezumi was a criminal, so he treated him as a victim here to add to the crimes of this group. They also captured Captain Smoker, making him a hostage. After that, for the first time in that sea, a king was assassinated by a pirate, no less than the captain of this group. Garp tried to stop them, but they managed to escape and once again met in Logue Town, which resulted in the destruction of a large part of the city. Sengoku spoke before taking a breath and continuing. They entered the Grand Line. There was a sighting of a large explosion near Whiskey Peak. They appeared in Alabasta, and the Navy spoke again. They attacked Luminarchy. Other islands after some time disappeared. The captain destroyed Jaya. With all this, government agents became their prisoners. Their last contact was in Water 7, capturing other government agents. Sengoku paused to give more weight to his next words. Garp remained silent. Luffy could not be forgotten after all these crimes he committed. He is bringing the whole world into chaos with his feats. Obviously, the Navy would respond accordingly. Sengoku also did not know all of Luffy's movements, because if he did, he would be even more surprised. After all, the pirate had killed 2 celestial dragons. Lucy looked at each of the reports with a furrowed brow, seeing that the brother she always loved was causing chaos in the sea, fighting against everything she believed in. We can no longer let this evil force continue sailing in this sea, so we will negotiate with this pirate gang to recover some government agents, one of them being a captured 7 warlords of the seas. Therefore our force is assembling 1 admiral, 10 vice-admirals, 10,000 elite sailors with a buster call of 50 ships. If we enter into conflict during the negotiation, we will eliminate this threat from the sea. Sengoku spoke and continued before they could celebrate. You have the mission to eradicate the Straw Hats in Anai's lobby. His voice echoed across the square. Oh. The crowd of sailors seemed frenzied with the idea of eliminating such a threat after causing so much chaos in the sea, no matter what kind of monsters are on that ship. We will eliminate them. A man shouted. Yes, justice will prevail. Another sailor from the crowd said. No matter the beasts we've seen in the newspaper, we have an admiral and 10 vice-admirals. Buster call. We will be called with a force that can destroy an island. Another said, celebrating. Lucy remained silent as everyone celebrated. She was not too excited about eliminating her brother. So she remained silent, just like Kobe, doubting that they could really stop Luffy there in Anai's lobby. Garp continued in silence, seeing people shouting below, wanting to kill his biological grandson. Garp. You know you're not participating in this mission, right? I called Tsuru to take care of it. Sengoku spoke calmly. I understand. My students can handle it. He said, but without much humor now, as he stood up and walked away without saying anything. Sengoku saw movement below the platform and saw Akainu standing up from his chair, knocking off the biscuit pieces that Garp had thrown at him while spitting and laughing before. He approached as everyone stopped roaring, seeing that the admiral in charge of the mission finally made a move. Listen, everyone. He began, getting heated. No matter what happens, we will not fail in this mission. Justice will not accept any failure, so we will eliminate this threat in Anai's lobby. He spoke growling, not entertaining any outcome other than killing Monkey D. Luffy. This could be seen as he was holding the pirates' wanted posters in his hands, making them burn while clenching them, turning into ashes. "Let's board the ships, it's time to head to a nice lobby." Ecchi spoke and jumped from the platform, landing on the ground and heading to the ships waiting for all of them. The sailors left their ranks and began marching behind the vice-admirals towards the 50 ships with the power to destroy an island, with Tsuru's ship waiting for them at sea. Sengoku watched everyone quickly settling on the ships and beginning to depart with civilians and military companions bidding them farewell in the square. Good luck. Fight for justice. Destroy the evil pirates. Satisfied with this, Sengoku turned around, trusting Ecchi to do his job. After all, they didn't just want to save the agents and Doflamingo. Ecchi was summoned because everyone knows his personality, and Sengoku wanted to end this threat that was growing by the day at sea. As the dozens of warships departed for an ice lobby, on an island a few thousand kilometers from Manafort, in the middle of the Grand Line, a village was being attacked. Zahahahaha. Teach laughed as he destroyed everything in the place with his companions, testing his powers. But not far from there, in the middle of the sea, a boat catching fire at high speed was tearing through the sea at that moment, the white beard tattoo shining on his back as he held his hat so it wouldn't fly off at the high speed. "Finally, I know where you are, Teach." Ace growled as he headed in that direction, his target finally within reach. He would finally confront and punish Teach for his unforgivable crime. A pity that Ace was too confident to know the danger he was putting himself into. Elsewhere, Luffy was saying goodbye to everyone in the town. It seemed that they had finally become friends with those people, looking completely opposite to when the Black Pearl had arrived in the town. "Goodbye, Pirate Luffy." Straw Hat. "Goodbye, pirates. This is unexpected." Yuta commented at the bow. "Thank you, everyone sama." Shirahoshi waved her hands as a farewell. "It was really a nice city to visit, it's a shame we must leave." Nojiko commented. "We're ready to depart, Captain." Ecchi spoke at the helm. "Understood, Hugo, raise the sails, let's depart," he said, and Hugo began to lower the sails with the pirate flag on the main mast as the ship finally began to move away from the port. "Nami, all set for reaching an ice lobby?" he asked, and his navigator nodded. "We're on course," she said confidently. Then the Black Pearl began to move away from Water 7 as a train cut the sea beside them. Their next stop would be in a small war between the Mugiwara and the Navy. "Raccoon here, what do you think of the Navy's force, enough or too weak for the data they have on Luffy's feats? After all, the Navy doesn't know Luffy's real strength. I would put 10,000 men on 10 ships like the original Buster Call, but for 10,000 men I thought it was too little, so I increased it to 50 ships." Chapter 223, Preparations for Battle 02. On the same island in the middle of the Grand Line, Teach was laughing as he walked with his group through the abandoned town. "Zai-ha-ha-ha-ha. Let's go, men," he said excitedly while laughing and walking out of the village, unaware that he was being watched by someone who had just arrived on the same island. "Teach." The single word was uttered by this man, and Teach quickly turned to look. He narrowed his eyes until he finally saw who it was on the roof of that house. "Ace?" Teach raised his voice excitedly. "I finally found you, Teach. You left our ship with a debt, and I've finally found you to settle it." Ace spoke calmly. "Zai-ha-ha-ha-ha. We finally meet, Captain. Your brother told me you were looking for me, I just didn't imagine we'd meet here." Zai-ha-ha-ha-ha. Teach laughed. "Luffy?" Ace raised an eyebrow. "Yes, that unpleasant little guy and very powerful." Teach grumbled. "But speaking of him, my men caught something interesting in a marine call. Did you know Luffy is about to enter a small war with the Navy at an ice lobby? I heard the Navy wasn't taking it easy sending an admiral and 50 warships to destroy the island." "Zai-ha-ha-ha-ha," he said, spreading his arms. "Luffy is going to war with the Navy?" Ace was surprised by this. "Yes, I was thinking of stopping by there. If he survives that, he certainly won't be in good shape, so we can capture him while he's weak." "Zai-ha-ha-ha-ha," Teach announced. "Capture him? All the more reason for me not to let you go." Ace spoke with a dark tone, not wanting Teach to go after Luffy. "Hey, Captain, how about joining me?" Teach suggested, but Ace just looked at him with the same dark tone. "I'm here to kill you, Teach, not for your nonsense." Ace spoke, and in the next moment, took 2 shots from Blackbeard's sniper. The shots in Ace opened holes filled with the fire of his logia. Then Ace closed the holes and simulated his pistols with his hand, shooting at the sniper who began to run from the attack. Burgers did not stay behind, picking up an entire house while throwing it on Ace, but the commander of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates used his power and created a fire pillar breaking the house, while Burgers got a bit burned. "Hot, hot, hot," he suddenly said, extinguishing the fire near his champion belt. "He's a logia, you guys back off, I can handle him." Teach said, and his companions started running from there, leaving only Teach and Ace. "Let me show you my power, Captain. The power of darkness," Teach said, and everything around him was filled with darkness emanating from his feet. The battle between Ace and Teach began, with Ace being surprised as he was grabbed by Teach after launching a black hole and sucking him in, but Ace still fought, injuring Teach several times. In the end, the island was being filled by a giant sun of fire and a huge ball of darkness fighting each other. It was only after 2 hours that the fight ended. Zai ha 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 ha. Teach laughed seeing Ace fallen on the ground unconscious while his body bled everywhere. "Captain." Teach's members approached. "Look, we caught a big fish." Zai ha 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 ha. He laughed with satisfaction. "Are we going to an ice lobby?" Burgers asked. "No, we have something more interesting here. Let's go to Maniford," Teach said, and they left. A day had passed, while in a place at sea, there was a certain island floating in the middle of a hole while the water fell before reaching it, as if this place had physical laws different from the rest of the world. Considered one of the 3 great structures of the government, in Ice Lobby was the point where all the great criminals were judged by a judge before taking them to impel down, as they already call it, a judicial island. "Those damn pirates." A cup broke as it crashed against the wall. "Spandam, don't get so enraged," said a huge body. "How can I stay calm, Fukaru? Years thrown away, by a pirate who emerged and simply destroyed everything." Spandam growled with so much hate. "Boss, let's get them. We are receiving reinforcements," Jabra said, shaking his mustache. "Yes, we'll eliminate them," Spandam said confidently. "They will pay for ruining my promotion that I ended up losing because of this," Spandam said, clenching his fists. "What should we do, Chief?" Kumadori asked, approaching. Now with Spandam more composed. "Let's get ready. Gather all 10,000 soldiers of Inai's lobby," he said, and the Cypher Pol 9 agents started to leave. "Damn you all. You will pay for daring to challenge the world government, straw hats." Spandam cursed. News about Luffy sending the video destroying the plans had already reached him, so his mission could already be considered a failure. What remains is to take down this pirate crew along with the Navy to save his career. Time passed while Spandam remained silent, looking around as he drank wine, until a sailor approached that room. "Agent Spandam. The reinforcements are arriving," the man said, and Spandam looked up with satisfaction. "That's great, let's see our guests," he said a bit more excitedly as he was going to the port of Inai's lobby on the way that would lead to Impel Down. As soon as he left, he saw the large fleet with 50 Navy warships approaching the island. "Ha ha ha. Look at this, do you think any pirate in this world could resist this force?" the man was shouting, looking at the ships. "I don't think so, Agent Spandam." The sailor next to him also got excited about this force. The ships approached and started to anchor in the port. The first was the Admiral's, stepping off the ship with some officers right behind. Okainu always showed a closed atmosphere, not letting anyone easily approach him. Then he raised his head surprised when he saw a man stopping him. "Admiral Sakazuki, it's a pleasure to be working with you. I've already commanded all the island's forces to prepare for battle." "I'm Commander Spandam, by the way," the man said still with an excited tone. Okainu smoked his cigar looking at that small man for a while before dismissing him like any subordinate. "Get out of my way," he said growling, while pushing a surprised Spandam. "Wait, what is this?" "I take care of Inai's lobby, this mission is mine," Spandam said, surprised by the disrespect. "It doesn't matter, I'm in charge now. Justice must be commanded by those who know how to guide it to eliminate all pirates." Okainu didn't say anything else as he brushed Spandam aside. "No, this can't be happening," he growled, losing control of Inai's lobby so easily. "I can't let this happen," he said before a shadow appeared above him. "Get out of the way," said the Vice Admiral, kicking Spandam, who ended up tripping and falling from the bridge of the port, into the water below. "Help!" he screamed as he fell into the water and the currents moving towards the big hole below the island. Okainu then began to organize the entire island, taking control of it, while all the Navy's elite summoned, began to be dispatched with the warships, as they remained in the water with cannons pointed at the island. The place was becoming increasingly militarily fortified, while the 10,000 soldiers already on the island, turned into 20,000. "Do you think we can beat him, Lucy?" Kobe approached Lucy making her rounds in a place on the island. "I don't know, but definitely, I am much stronger than the last time we met. I hope to beat Luffy this time," she commented, but there was a nostalgic smile on her lips with the desire to meet her brother after months without seeing him. "Yes, I also want to show my strength to him." Kobe spoke firmly. He couldn't do anything with Luffy in Logue Town, just watch the chaos in the square without doing anything. Even still not being at that level, he still wanted to show his growth. "Yes, I'm sure Luffy will like that," Lucy said, and soon they were interrupted by something. All the loudspeakers on the island began to emit the sound of an alarm. Attention everyone, the Straw Hat ship is approaching the island. Repeat, attention, a black ship with the Straw Hat flag is approaching. The announcer spoke as his voice echoed throughout the island. They're finally here. Kobe said, almost not believing what was about to happen. Yes, let's go. Lucy spoke. The voice returned over all the loudspeakers. Everyone to your posts. I repeat, everyone to your posts. As the island went into a frenzy with more than 20,000 soldiers preparing for the possible battle, loading their ammunition, checking their weapons, sharpening their swords, everyone was anticipating everything that could happen in this organization. Meanwhile, in the island's tower, Akamu looked in the direction Luffy was coming with the others, smoking his cigar more than usual. His eyes narrowed. You've finally arrived, a threat that I will eliminate today and here. Son of Dragon. He growled. Not far from him was Spandam. After being saved from falling into the island's hole, he returned to the tower of the Judicial Island but ended up just observing as the Admiral and Vice Admirals commanded everything in his place, leaving him quite frustrated. They are here. I want to laugh at Rob Lucci for being captured. Jabra said with crossed arms. At least Spandam was in command of his team. Yes, they've arrived. It's our chance to save our team by eliminating the pirates and even earning a promotion for it. Spandam said with some hope. On the Black Pearl, the ship did not seem intimidated as more than 50 Navy ships were on the other side of the island. They were approaching at full speed. Chapter 224, in I's Lobby 01. Before the meeting of Lucy and Kobe, the ship was still amidst the sea. We are getting closer, Luffy. Nami spoke, looking into the distance, with the island becoming a larger point on the horizon. That's good, it's time for us to go get our prisoners. Luffy commented, entering the ship and heading to the ship's prison along with Zoro and Hugo. Doflamingo, Pajon, and all the captured Cypher Pal 9 agents looked towards the door opening with Luffy entering along with two others. Luffy looked at everyone. Doflamingo and Pajon were being fed now, so their condition wasn't as extreme as the last time Luffy visited them. The Cypher Pal 9 agent members, despite being a bit downtrodden besides Rob Lucci, were fine, having been captured just a few days ago. Hello everyone. Luffy announced with a small smile, but there was no response back. They don't seem to like you, Captain. Zoro commented, noticing the silence. Nobody had responded to Luffy's greeting. After all, everyone was angry at that man. It's alright, but soon they'll be happy, since we are going to release them in exchange for enriching us. Luffy commented with a smile as the prisoners looked a bit surprised. Are we going to be released? Bueno asked in his cell calmly. That's right, we are arriving at the meeting point, so it's better to take you guys out there. Hugo commented. Without adding anything more, Luffy began opening their cells and taking out his prisoners. With the help of his other companions, they brought everyone to the deck while keeping them in sea-stone handcuffs. As soon as they left the interior of the ship, the prisoners finally saw that they were in front of the Judicial Island, with Black Pearl even closer. They were a bit surprised by this, but the scenery looked chaotic, warships everywhere as if a great battle was going to erupt there. What is this? Califa murmured quietly. Foo-fa-foo. It seems the government has prepared very well for this negotiation. Doflamingo commented with a characteristic smile. That's true, I hope they at least bring the agreed money. Luffy commented while crossing his arms, also satisfied with what he was seeing. He expected no less. Black Pearls continued sailing towards the island non-stop, while the local alarm was sounded at that moment. So loud. Yuta commented looking over the edge of the ship. Is all this for us? How interesting. Alvida said, placing her club on her shoulder. From the ship, everyone could see movements on the island, with thousands of soldiers getting ready. Look at that island. It flies in the middle of a hole. Vivi commented, pointing at the island and Yuta with Shirahoshi joining her. Do you think we'll find Lucy there? Nojiko approached Luffy. Lucy? I would love to see her again. Yuta heard the mention and spoke excitedly. Lucy-sama. Shirahoshi also expressed her desire to find her. Yes. Luffy simply said with a smile. I feel we can find her there. He concluded. The ship continued approaching until the port was right in front of it before falling into the hole, with various Navy soldiers looking at them cautiously all around. The ship finally arrived at the port, anchoring there. It's really quite a sight. Kuina commented. Luffy left the strange structure of the island behind and looked towards the port. He looked down and saw who was the person there to receive him, quite surprised. He didn't speak to her immediately, but looked at his crew. The ones who will take part in this negotiation will be Yamato, Zoro, Kuina, Hugo, Nami, Nojiko, Lami, Rachel, Alvida, and Vivi. He said to each of these members before continuing. While Yuta, Shirahoshi, Ecchi, Choo, Robin, Chopper, and the rest of the animals will stay to protect the ship. Luffy wanted to keep the ship safe, and having some members with affinity with water would be the best choice. Everyone nodded while the members who were going started to take the prisoners, as Luffy left first, jumping from the ship to talk a bit with the person waiting for him down below. He jumped with a smile from the ship while his cape swung with gravity, landing calmly in front of the person. He looked at this person and greeted her with the same smile. To think that a vice admiral like you would be here to receive me, this is an honor, Miss Tsuru. Luffy commented. The lady herself looked at Luffy with interest. So, you are Garp's other grandson, the troublesome one. She spoke calmly, looking at him while all the sailors around just nervously watched this interaction. Behind Tsuru, there was a group of women. That's true, I like to grab the world's attention. Luffy spoke arrogantly and looked around. I thought you would film something like this, since you are about to tackle the biggest rookie of this generation. Luffy kept his tone while turning back to Tsuru. The Navy is doing this secretly. Our intention here is an exchange, not a war. She spoke, but Luffy almost scoffed, knowing it didn't seem like that. However, he changed the subject. And my sister? She's here, isn't she? Luffy asked, and Tsuru nodded. Yes, a lovely girl, why can't you follow her path? She asked with interest. I've always liked the path where I was free. I have my own justice and I think I wouldn't like to go against it because of orders from superiors. Luffy comments. The Navy's justice is always the right one. She commented, looking him in the eyes as if those words were unshakable. Don't think so, the Navy is funded and that means it has a boss. If you receive an order that you must destroy an island for the interest of the world government, even if it kills innocents, you will do it, or have you forgotten what happened in Ohara? I have a living witness on my ship. Luffy commented, no longer holding back his mockery of the justice she believes to be unshakable. Tsuru trembled a bit at his words but said nothing more while everyone else watched in silence. Anyway, let's go to the negotiation site. Do you mind if it's in the middle of the island? She said, and Luffy nodded. In the middle of the island or at sea, it was all the same to him. It didn't take long for the other crew members to jump off the ship, reaching the port. You have some interesting people. I didn't know the Princess of Alabasta had become a pirate. She commented, looking at Vivi. Vivi stayed silent, and Luffy shrugged. She doesn't trust the Navy and the government much after what happened with her country. Luffy said. And this is Kaido's daughter. No one knew he had a biological daughter. It was quite surprising that you had her all this time, but you are very bold to pick this kind of fight. I don't know how Kaido has not invaded this side of the Grand Line yet. She commented, and Luffy just smiled. It seems I will have to meet him in the New World. What else can I do? I still keep a member of his crew with me. He spoke, and then his crew followed him as he continued with Tsuru into the Judicial Island. They kept going while Luffy encountered more and more Marines throughout the place. His group was not bothered, but certainly was watched waiting to make any move from the pirates for them to act. Luffy could sense their emotions. They are here. So this is what a 750 million bounty pirate looks like. Never seen one before. Will we soon have to fight these monsters? This is a negotiation, not a war. Do you think what will happen if the negotiation fails? Look, it's Doflamingo. To think that 7 warlords of the seas would be humiliated like this. There are also the captured government agents. I heard they are important. Almost everyone in that group has their own bounties. The amount of conversation among the crowd of Marines was huge, and Luffy didn't want to listen to everything, so he stopped paying attention to them while he continued looking forward where Vice Admiral Tsuru was leading them. There were several giants too. Ha ha ha. It seems quite exciting what will happen here. Zoro said, placing his hand on his sheath. That's true, I'm willing to exchange a few punches with giants. Hugo spoke. There are surely many good swordsmen here, I hope to have the chance to face them. Kuina commented. It didn't take long for them to arrive in the middle of the island where there was a large space in the middle of the road. There was a group of personnel waiting for them. Luffy looked with interest at the group. After all, there was a man smoking a navy cigar with his cape swinging with the wind and 10 people behind them. One he recognized as Momonga, while the others he had never seen, but he knew some of their identities from the original work. His group continued following while all the vice admirals, admiral, and even the Cypher Pol 9 agent members were waiting for them. Foo. What an interesting reception. Doflamingo commented with an excited smile. That's true. I'm looking forward to meeting such unique characters. Luffy laughed, while Tsuru just looked at him with a raised eyebrow. You really are unique, Monkey D. Luffy. Let's see if you will continue to be so in front of the pride of justice. She commented. It's not like I haven't faced an admiral before. Luffy shrugged. Hey, Gloomy. If we get into a fight here, let's see who defeats more Marines. Rage teased Lamy. TSK, of course, but don't cry after you lose to me. Lami said arrogantly. As always, they always competed with everything, even in bed with Luffy, since her husband had to endure their competitions. Then they continued until they finally arrived at the site. Luffy could feel the burning gaze of Ecchi staring at him with murderous intent. Tsuru approached the group of Marines and continued walking while Luffy and the others stopped. After all, the negotiations were about to start at this moment. He was just 12, while thousands of Marine soldiers surrounded them like an anthill. Outside the island, dozens of ships still continued to keep their cannons aimed at the island, ready to fire at any moment. Luffy was not intimidated, he just kept his bandit smile and looked at Ecchi and his murderous gaze. This is going to be interesting. Chapter 225, in I's Lobby 02. Ecchi looked at Luffy, still holding his gaze. This is the first time we've met, Pirate Monkey D. Luffy. Ecchi spoke while growling, his cigar emitting an even more intense smoke with his words. True. I didn't imagine we would meet so soon, Admiral Ecchi. Luffy said, without a hint of fear. He turned to the others behind the Admiral. Vice Admiral Tsuru positioned herself alongside her colleagues while Ecchi led the negotiation as the Admiral. At the same time, I can say the same about all of you, even though I don't know the vast majority, but it's good to see you again, Vice Admiral Momonga. Luffy spoke calmly as if he were in a pub with friends rather than in front of dozens of people who wanted to kill him. All the admirals were looking, keeping a neutral face to Luffy's words, but curious as they looked not just at Luffy, but the entire group behind him. Except for the Princess of Alabasta, all the pirates maintained a rather calm look towards the admirals. While the high-ranking Navy members maintained an alert stance to engage in combat with the pirate group at any moment, the same could be said of the pirates, closely watching for any movement from the group. It was a unique sight as the sailors saw these groups facing each other. Admirals and vice admirals on one side and the Straw Hat Pirates on the other. Kobe commented from a distance as he stood in the crowd with all the other elite sailors. Luffy. Lucy looked at her brother from a distance leading his group and exchanging a few words with the Navy. Luffy had also felt Lucy's presence from that distance among the sailors, but he just smiled thinking of his sister. He had something more important to deal with now. This. Kobe suddenly saw a strange movement and Lucy noticed it too. A bit close to the vice admirals, Cypher Paul 9 agent was also gathered, as Spandam wanted to be part of this war and earn his own merits. He was looking from a distance, eager to act quickly to get his credits, then saw when Luffy exchanged some words with the Navy members trying to find a chance to defeat him and come out with a promotion from I's lobby. He looked intently as he touched his pistol at his waist loaded with seastone bullets. The other vice admirals noticed this with their observation hockey, and the same could be said for the pirates. But nobody cared. What is he doing? Jabra asked, bewildered. He wanted to laugh at Lucci being treated like a prisoner, but saw that these two groups were so powerful that he couldn't even breathe. After all, he had to acknowledge Rob Lucci's strength, and seeing him so easily defeated was a warning of how powerful their enemies were. But seeing Spandam's movement, he frowned. I don't know, but it wouldn't be good, said another Cypher Paul 9 agent member, Fukaru, fearfully. I'm going to be promoted. Spandam shouted and wasted no time. He gripped the handle of his pistol and drew it, aiming directly at Luffy. However, before he could squeeze the trigger, Luffy just looked at him for a moment and, in a glance, launched waves of the Conqueror's hockey directly at him while the space seemed to change color on another plane. The wave passed through Spartan as his eyes turned white and he dropped the gun, falling unconscious the next moment. Conqueror's hockey, said one of the vice admirals. What did you expect? Look at his record, look at his family. Another vice admiral shrugged. He has become much stronger than before. Momonga spoke in a somber tone. Now their instincts screamed to stay away from Luffy, even though he hadn't entered that form he used to defeat him in Alabasta. Well, one less rat to bother us. Now, let's get down to business. Luffy said and stared at Ecchi in front of him, who maintained his usual gaze. Ecchi looked at him for a while, holding himself back from attacking just yet. As his hand tightened and heated up, it was like Ecchi didn't want to hand over the money. It was a challenge for Luffy. And what if I no longer want to do business with you? He asked. Luffy just smiled. Well, then you'll have to hire the new 7 warlords of the seas. Luffy said, swiftly pulling his pistol from his waist and aiming right at the head of Don Quixote Doflamingo, the closest prisoner to him. Doflamingo had a powerful body, but with the sea stone added to Luffy's power, Doflamingo's head would be blown off as soon as he pulled the trigger. Luffy didn't take his eyes off Ecchi for a moment while keeping the pistol raised, seeing if he really dared him to continue before killing Doflamingo, even if Nami would be a little upset. Doflamingo liked it the least, feeling that he could die right there, which was not good for his already wounded pride. Luffy saw that Ecchi said nothing, So he decided to break the silence. I know you don't care about him. In fact, you yourself would like him dead. However, your boss wants him delivered, doesn't he? So let's resolve this. Hand over the money, otherwise, the people above you will be very displeased. Luffy said arrogantly. Okainu looked for a while longer, gritting his teeth for having to do exactly what a pirate wanted, then spoke with a severe voice. Bring the money, he said. Some cadets who were nearby the groups quickly obeyed, going to the corner behind the vice admirals and bringing 10 briefcases, placing them and approaching the group. Open all of them, Luffy said, still with the pistol raised towards the 7 warlords of the seas. The cadets hesitated and looked at the admiral. Do what he says. Okainu growled with disgust. After opening them, Luffy looked and smiled at that, since it was all the money. Put the briefcases all behind the prisoners, Nami suggested, and seeing that no one from the Marines said anything, the cadets did exactly that, placed them carefully among the pirates and quickly ran away from there. Luffy looked at his group. Release all of them, he said, and quickly his crew obeyed, releasing all the Cypher Pol 9 agent members and the 7 warlords of the seas. Well, you can go now. It was nice our time together, Luffy joked, as the agents snarled and began to walk towards the side of the high-ranking Marines, having lost their mission thanks to this pirate and returning defeated and humiliated by the enemy. Doflamingo, despite having his pride quite hurt for almost 2 months, didn't seem to care much now. He just laughed as he walked toward the Marines in his strange way. Meanwhile, all the soldiers surrounding them looked surprised at that. After all, it seemed that everything was going well without entering into conflict. Good thing. I thought we'd have to face them, said a sailor. It seems it all went well then. I can see my family again, said a second. How can you say that? We are justice and must eliminate the evil, said a third angrily. Yes, we should be killing them now. Another agreed while others seemed relieved. Now we just have to wait for them to leave the island and hope these pirates never come back, said another, praying that the pirates would go away. After all, many of them were giant monsters, and they did not want to see these monsters as enemies when they are just ants to be crushed. Luffy hadn't moved an inch to go back, his stance remained the same as before. He looked at Akainu with a smile. After all, this was just the beginning. Come on, Akainu. That was way too easy and quick. Are you waiting for us to leave so you can attack us from behind, or shall we start this fight right here? Luffy commented, looking the admiral in the eyes. All the vice admirals tensed at that moment with Luffy's words. After all, some of them believed it would be just a negotiation. But Luffy was no fool, knowing Akainu and his personality. Now, without the hostages with them, the battle would be inevitable as this admiral would do everything to kill them, even if it meant killing most of the Marines here. So, why wouldn't Luffy face him head-on instead of waiting for a shot in the back? You're smart, pirate. I really would never let you go, Akainu admitted. After all, that was his personality and this was his final order from his superiors. He had to eliminate this pirate group, no matter the outcome. Good, at least you admitted it, Luffy said, laughing, as the whole place tensed up, feeling the heavy atmosphere with Luffy's cheerful laughter, for this was the cue for the beginning of the battle that was about to start. Akainu growled at Luffy as he was laughing so comfortably, while his hand began to emit smoke, transforming into lava and growing, forming a large fist. Son of Dragon, you will be eliminated today, along with your crew, Akainu decreed, as if seeing the future, and Luffy stopped laughing just to maintain his small smile. Big words, Lava Man, but can you back them up? Luffy said arrogantly. The next moment, both Luffy and Akainu moved together. They would initiate a clash, a fist of lava against a fist of purple flames. As they collided the next moment, both using armament hockey, sending waves in all directions while everything trembled. This was the beginning of the battle between the Straw Hat Pirates and the Marines at Ice Lobby. Chapter 226, in Ice Lobby 03. The heat of the lava and the purple flames collided against each other, exploding everything around. As soon as the collision happened, the earth was lifted, and a vortex of wind spread to all sides. All the vice admirals felt the impact as their capes flew against the wind, but they were already prepared to fight, while the Straw Hats also did not lag behind, getting ready for the next clash. However, neither of the two groups moved, just looking at the clash between Luffy and Akainu, both disputing with each other while their powers illuminated the whole island. The collision made the whole place tremble while all the more distant sailors felt the pressure and the heat of their fruits. They started to fight. A sailor shouted. What's going to happen? Another spoke with a tone of fear. Luffy. Lucy commented, protecting herself from the wind and looking at the force of the impact from a distance. The battle continues between the two until it generated an explosion, with a tie of the two flames, creating a huge smoke while the ground cracked. However, those who were within the explosion remained in the same place still. The explosion echoed throughout the island until the smoke began to disappear and Luffy appeared at that moment in front of his companions, looking with interest. Akainu also appeared without any mark of damage. He looked at Luffy with some glint of surprise. "You resisted my lava?" he murmured as he clenched his fist in anger. "My heat should have burned you," he said. "I have the flames of Ifrit, the flames of chaos. It's not the heat of lava that will manage to burn me," Luffy taunted. Akainu gritted his teeth and looked at the pirate. "So be it. I will kill you anyway," he said. And, without turning his face, he issued the order to everyone on the island, "Attention Marines. Attack the Straw Hat Pirates and eliminate them." He gave the order and all the sailors around began to make their move. Even with some scared, there was still justice for them to do. "Well, it looks like we're going to have a fight," Zoro commented, unconcerned, with thousands of Marines running towards them with weapons and swords. He touched his sheath, and his look was on the row of Marines behind Akainu. After all, the thousands of soldiers around him were nothing compared to those 11 behind the Admiral. "Wow, there are many of them." Yamato laughed as he looked around the movements. "I think we should first worry about the Vice Admirals, after all of them are looking at us," Kuina commented as she began to draw her sword, Hiron Maru. "It looks like we're going to clash," Vice Admiral Tsuru commented with her aged voice. "It doesn't matter, we have to eliminate them anyway." Doberman, another Vice Admiral, spoke as he drew his sword. "You don't mind if I act first, right? I want to see what this group is made of." A Vice Admiral named Dalmatian, who fought with his fists and dressed up as a Dalmatian dog, said. He didn't wait for an answer from his colleagues and kicked the ground the next moment. He disappeared, passing over Akainu and Luffy using instant transmission. They didn't even care about it as they continued to stare at each other. Dalmatian appeared above the pirates, making the first move while preparing his fists to attack them. When he launched the attack, no one moved, but the air changed above the pirates and a powerful vortex hit him in the air, making him unbalanced, while the force propelled him backwards, and he used moonwalk to stabilize in the air, looking curiously at who had made the attack. In the reports, there was a Win user among them, but who he was seeing attacking was not the girl with orange hair as he read in the papers while preparing for this mission, but rather the Princess of Alabasta. Vivi looked confidently at the enemy in the air as her hand had created that wind. She was no longer a defenseless princess. In addition to receiving a unique fruit, she also participated in the training in Skypiea and could be considered a great force in the group. Luffy also trusted his life with her, and she wanted to honor her husband's trust. Then, her body began to transform into wind, and she flew upward, flying toward the Vice Admiral. "Wait, is that a wind Logia?" A Vice Admiral, Onigamo, commented, a bit surprised. "So, a wind Logia user with them too? Doesn't that make them have 2 Logias in the crew? This group is quite troublesome. I wonder how they manage to get so many powerful fruits every day. Mythical zones, Logias. Moreover, where is that Enel also? He didn't know hockey, so this is a good chance to eliminate him, before he becomes troublesome with that fruit," commented Vice Admiral Strawberry, holding a pink sword. He was a bit worried. After all, the lightning fruit is the most powerful of all the Logias. So many Marines died today in this fight. Yamakaji, a Vice Admiral leaning more towards Kyuzn, commented. "This is our job. These pirates could do something worse, and these people died to end the chaos in the sea. At least we have to honor them after this battle," Stainless said, grabbing his katana. "I don't like Doflamingo, but these pirates are even more dangerous, so we must defeat them here," Vice Admiral Momonga said, drawing his sword as well, wanting his rematch against Luffy and the others. "TSK." Vice Admiral Cancer clicked his tongue while smoking his cigar, preparing better for the battle. Vice Admiral Bastille put his weapon on his shoulder and began to take some steps. "No matter what happens, we will finish off Garp's grandson. They have a big guy there. Let's see if he can match my fists." Maynard, a muscular Vice Admiral, said while clapping fist against his other hand, looking at Hugo. Tsuru listened to her colleagues' comments and analyzed the whole situation, as she was a great strategic mind that created many paths to victory for the Marines. She looked at Strawberry, who had mentioned Enel, the missing Logia user still. "About that Enel, we should be concerned. He might appear at any moment. After all, he is a lightning user, possibly hovering above this island the entire time," Tesoro commented, despite none of them knowing that he himself was trapped on an island in the calm belt at that moment, in training. But Tsuru worked with possibilities, so she could not neglect this possibility as well. "Anyway, it's better we don't just stand here," another Vice Admiral commented, and everyone nodded, quickly starting to move towards the enemy group with everyone kicking the ground. Luffy was still standing in front of Akainu without moving an inch, waiting for them to initiate a new attack. For him, their fight was just beginning. Above them, A group with 10 vice admirals quickly passed to face their other pirate companions, but were quickly surprised with the appearance of the pirates, using the same techniques as them, stopping the vice admiral group, while the first blows were exchanged against each other in the air. Yamato looked at her opponent, Vice Admiral Bastille, and used her weapon against his blade. The Vice Admiral was surprised by the strength of Kaido's daughter and was quickly losing ground in the air, as he was pushed back. "She is very strong," he commented in surprise, since it seemed he was not strong enough to fight her. "It's better you leave her to me." A voice emerged beside him and Tsuru appeared, swapping places with him, as she tried to strike Yamato. Yamato balanced herself in the air using moonwalk and looked at the lady with curiosity. "I will be your opponent as well, daughter of Kaido," Tsuru said calmly. "All right, ma'am." Yamato smiled, and soon the two were attacking each other with force again, while Bastille also joined the fight against Kaido's daughter. Zoro immediately exchanged sword blows with Vice Admiral Strawberry. Their blades clashed in the air against each other while they were suspended. Kuina exchanged sword blows with Vice Admiral Momonga. Nojiko used her fruit, blowing up the ground below her and quickly reached Vice Admiral Dalmatian, trying to punch the Vice Admiral and exploding the air. Alvida did not stay behind, as she used her club to try to strike Vice Admiral Cancer. She also exploded the ground with the force of her knees and launched a brute attack against the Vice Admiral. Nami created wings and went head-on with her fists wrapped in a green wind vortex against Vice Admiral Doberman. Raja quickly enveloped herself in flames and flew toward Vice Admiral Yamakachi to kick him. Lami raised her hands and used her power to appear in front of Vice Admiral Onigamo, while using her sword. Hugo and Maynard clashed against each other using their styles. Luffy, seeing all his companions facing their own opponent, while they were surrounded by enemies, did not waste time. Both moved in sync as soon as the first decided to act. Luffy took the initiative to attack Akainu, wrapping his arm in Haki and punching him once more. Once again their fists connected, creating explosions of attacks that made everyone feel on that island. Doflamingo saw this and began to laugh, but also saw the chance for revenge for what happened to him. So, he would also interfere along with the Navy to defeat the Straw Hats, and Cypher Paul 9 agent also did not stay behind. "What are we going to do?" Bueno asked. Everyone looked at Jack Spartan, who was lying on the ground unconscious. "We can't face them in this kind of battle. This battle is beyond us." Jabra spoke. "We can take their weak point." Rob Lucci commented and looked towards the horizon at the end of the island while the fights were already happening. There, Black Pearl and the rest of the crew were standing. After all, the most powerful members should be these. So, we could use the weaker members to weaken their main force. He commented with a dark look. After all, if they cannot face the strongest point, then they should start with the weakest link. Battles: Yamato against Vice Admiral Bastille and Vice Admiral Tsuru. Zoro against Vice Admiral Strawberry. Kuina against Vice Admiral Momonga. Nojiko against Vice Admiral Mozambia. Vivi against Vice Admiral Dalmatian. Alvida against Vice Admiral Cancer. Nami against Vice Admiral Doberman. Reiju against Vice Admiral Yamakachi. Lami against Vice Admiral Onigamo. Hugo against Vice Admiral Maynard. Luffy against Admiral Akainu. Chapter 227, in Ice Lobby 04. Boom. Boom. The island shook with explosions, with bright lights outshining the sun itself. Meanwhile, on the Straw Hats ship in the harbor, the rest of the crew watched the explosions wondering what was happening, as even the Black Pearl trembled. "It's better we stay alert, it seems the negotiation went wrong," Rubin commented calmly on the deck. "Are we going to fight against the Navy?" Shirahoshi murmured, a bit confused. "Sharky, Sharky, Sharky," Megalo said next to her, wanting to protect his friend. "Grr." Laboon emitted his whale sound. Crew was scared while trying to hide somewhere on the ship, running around. "Nay. It looks like we will have to face them soon," Haki commented. Yuta remained silent, looking towards the island with the bright lights fighting one another. "The heat reaches here," she murmured at last. "Wolf! Wolf!" Chaochu barked dangerously towards the island. It didn't take long to see numerous people running towards the ship in white uniforms wielding weapons, just appearing as ants in the distance. We're being attacked, Chopper said while crying and running. Suddenly, an explosion sound happened, not from the island, but from outside of it. A moment later, from the side of the ship, the water exploded. "They're aiming cannonballs at us," Yuta alerted. "More cannonballs are coming." Chopper pointed his paw towards the sky, and there were 2 projectiles coming in their direction. Haki decided to act now, grabbing his swords with the 6-sword style. He quickly sliced the air, sending flying slashes with Tempest Kick towards the cannonballs, making them split before exploding in the air. Boom. Robin wasted no time and began using her fruit, making eyes appear all around the coast. She didn't take long to spy on everything that was happening and return to the others. We will be attacked soon. There are at least 2,000 Navy soldiers coming towards us, besides the 50 ships, and some are approaching this side already. She pointed to a corner where there were 10 ships coming towards them. Leave it to me. I'll handle the ships. Shirahoshi took initiative while speaking and quickly jumped into the water. Meanwhile, on the ships, a man with a magnifying glass looked towards the movement of the Straw Hat's mermaid. That mermaid? She jumped into the water. Get ready to capture her, he said, and everyone nodded, preparing to launch new cannonballs at the ship and take care of the mermaid approaching. She's a mermaid, what can she do coming towards us? Said one sailor, mocking. I heard she's one of the most beautiful women in the world. I'd like to see her. Another man spoke. Meanwhile, the same man with the magnifying glass continued looking and saw a shadow in the water approaching, but it wasn't quite a shadow of a mermaid, or at least she had changed from a mermaid and suddenly began to grow more and more, covering the whole area. What is this? He asked, with a surprised look, seeing those huge shadows heading towards the Navy ships. Careful. Someone spoke, pointing to shadows emerging under the ships. Suddenly, the waters explode and a huge leviathan appears, biting the hull of the ship and throwing it away with a movement of its head. Help! The sailors screamed, but the leviathan didn't stop, as everyone was frozen, watching a ship flying and the leviathan now looking towards them. The mermaid princess, in the form of a leviathan, opened her mouth and began to suck in a blue energy, preparing a devastating attack. Shoot at her before she attacks us. The sailors shouted and began to act against the leviathan. What is this? Since when can sea monsters be so dangerous? A man asked. Strangers, we use technologies to keep them at bay. I don't know what's happening. Who is this sea monster? Could it be one with a... Could it? Another asked, considering the possibility of it being a devil fruit user. They began to fire cannonballs at the transformed mermaid princess, but the leviathan's hulls were resilient, covering her entire body, and the balls simply bounced off her without harm as they exploded. Shirahoshi finally charged all her power and with a roar, launched a blue water energy at the ships, devastating them instantly as they were blown up. Impossible. She destroyed 3 Navy warships with that attack. What is this sea monster? Why is it attacking us? Shouted another man on a ship still intact. Shirahoshi did not stop. She began to fight against the sailors as they tried to use some techniques of the 6 styles. After all, they are the elite of the Navy. But Shirahoshi, even before eating her fruit, had started her training since she began sailing with Luffy, and she was the most talented in the crew with hockey. Dodging their attacks and even withstanding some without care, while she began to devour the sailors and launch water from her mouth, biting the other ships. More and more ships began to explode with the power of her econ. From afar, one could still see 6 ships fighting against the giant serpent, as more and more ships were blown up and sinking, while the screams of terror from the sailors could be heard. It seems she is handling those ships well. Robin commented. We should be more concerned about that army. Yuta said and pointed to the harbor where there were several thousands of Marines running towards them with weapons and swords, shouting that they would defeat the Straw Hats. Wolf! Wolf! Chaochu decided to act. Then, he barked and jumped off the deck, saying he would fight the sailors in the language of dogs. Go, Chaochu! Chopper shouted excitedly, understanding his friend. Chaochu landed in the harbor and began to run towards the Marines, who looked surprised. While descending to the harbor with the intention of attacking the ship, they saw a dog barking at them angrily as it approached. A dog? A Marine asked, surprised in the front. You idiot, that's the Straw Hat's dog. Don't you know he is very dangerous? He almost devoured Vice Admiral Momonga. Don't be fooled by the poor and mangy appearance of that dog. Another spoke. Chaochu heard this perfectly, getting even angrier at these Marines for the insults. Then, he didn't waste time, as he jumped in the air, his transformation happened, turning him into a large Cerberus, touching the ground with his legs as the place cracked under his new weight, and he growled with his 3 heads at all the Marines who stopped at that moment, stunned and fearful in their eyes. But Chaochu was too upset after what he heard. He opened the 3 mouths, 3 elements began to emerge, and he didn't waste time launching his attack against all 2,000 Marines, causing explosions as the ground was destroyed in ice, fire, and lightning, devastating the entire port in that area. Boom! 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 Debris flew everywhere, and in the sky, a group of people flew past it, dodging while Chaochu didn't let any sailor pass on the ground. The crew on the ship quickly noticed the movement in the sky. Nay. It looks like they are coming this way. Ecchi commented, but everyone already knew while keeping their heads attentive to the sky. Aren't those our former prisoners? Chopper pointed out. Yes. It seems that after they were released, they came after us. Yuta said. It was Cypher Pol 9 agent. They observed the explosions happening in the port and on the water, ignoring them for the moment, as their goal was to capture the weaker members of the pirate crew. They finally approached the ship and paused for a moment while looking at the rest of the crew. There were Ecchi, Yuta, Robin, Chopper, Laboon, and crew hidden inside the ship. Cypher Paul 9 agent. Ruben commented, looking at them as they also looked back at her. You're the demon child. Nico Robin. Rob Lucci said as he faced her. It seems we can have some important people from the group and use them as hostages. Bueno commented. 2 women, a fishman, and some mangy animals for our team to handle. What a shame for us. Jabra commented, dissatisfied. No matter, a weakness is a weakness. Now, let's attack them. Rob Lucci commented and advanced towards the ship. However, Ecchi, Yuta, Robin, and Chopper responded in kind, also using moonwalk and instant transmission quickly, surprising everyone. With their strikes, they made everyone from Cypher Paul 9 agent immediately retreat with that attack, quite surprised because they did not have information on many of the Straw Hats beyond the main members. Then, seeing others using their own techniques, even superior ones, was quite startling. The battle on this side was just beginning. All the Straw Hats were involved in this battle. Meanwhile in the sky, a bird quickly appeared, using a camera. This was none other than Morgan's, learning about the operation and he didn't want to miss it, so he personally went to Anai's lobby. This is really great. He screamed excitedly. Explosions and more explosions. Fighting between a type of pirates against a whole squadron of vice admirals led by an admiral intending to exterminate this band of supernovas. He celebrated. I'm rooting for the Straw Hats. If they win this fight, they will become an unparalleled legend on their journey before going to the New World. Morgan shouted joyfully. Now let's try to capture all the fights. Because all of them seem so interesting. He said and went back to filming from that height. Chapter 228, in I's Lobby 05. Baby 5 was scrubbing the captain's room, as he had asked her to clean it as soon as they arrived in Anai's lobby. He had put his maid to do it, precisely so as not to bother him in the negotiation, since it was Doflamingo after all, and he didn't know how the woman would react to that. The master will surely like his room. She exclaimed internally, how he always needs me. She said satisfied, and looked at the place shining, clean floor, sheets changed, scented environment. Maybe I should break something, he could punish me tonight. She exclaimed like a love-struck girl, but something happened at that moment. She saw a vase she had cleaned from the captain as a decoration of his room and thought about knocking it down to break it. However, the ship suddenly began to shake, and that vase she planned to break, suddenly swayed and fell from the dresser, breaking on the floor. She was at a loss for words for a while as she saw the broken shards scattered around the place, just watching the mess without saying anything, until a shard moved towards her feet, which she quickly crushed with her heel. Her calm look turned into a wild and stern gaze as the whole atmosphere around her darkened while veins appeared on her forehead. She began to scream with all her might, "Who dares mess up the master's room?" She shouted angrily, as she clenched her fist and started to leave the room heading towards the outside of the ship. She walked through the corridors with long strides while letting her mop fall and quickly opened the deck door, facing a war happening on all sides. There were explosions, roars of monsters, and people hitting each other in various directions, but Baby 5 was not shaken by this. She just looked at some members of her crew fighting in the air against a group of strange people using moonwalk. At the port, the place was destroyed by Chouchou transformed into Cerberus while launching elemental attacks on the scared sailors trying to escape and not die. In the sea, a giant serpent was finishing off the last ships, blowing them up and sinking all, to head towards the other ships on the other side of the island, still launching cannonballs. Baby 5 also noticed explosions happening on the side of the ship launched by those ships that Shirahoshi intends to destroy. Some bullets were flying towards the Black Pearl at that moment, but she noticed both Megalo, Laboon, and crew protecting the ship at that time. Crew, despite the fear, used air cuts exploding the cannonballs. Megalo used finger pistol and Laboon iron body while the bullets exploded on his head without affecting him. Baby 5, still irritated, ignored the cannonballs, not letting herself be shaken by the war on all sides. She just wanted to destroy someone and find the responsible for messing up the captain's room. Turning her gaze upwards, seeing that some of her companions were still fighting against enemies, she decided they would be the first to feel her wrath. She walked to the middle of the deck and bent her knees, before jumping off the deck, exploding the place, while flying into the sky. Her feet became a kind of proportion engine that Luffy had suggested while they were training, making her propel with more speed in the air, looking like a blur if she added some techniques of the 6 styles she learned. Pico was fighting at that moment against Yuta, when he felt someone coming in his direction at high speed. When he noticed, Baby 5 was already above him, while her expression showed fury. "You damn bastard!" she shouted, and he was stunned without understanding why this maid-dressed woman appeared enraged. "Hey, what are you doing?" Yuta asked, stunned, since this was her chance to prove that she had become strong, but now Baby 5 had interfered in her fight. Baby 5 ignored Yuta's protest, while looking furiously at her target, transforming her arm into an impact weapon, like a shotgun, and fired point-blank at the man who couldn't even react, feeling immense pain sinking into his belly and flying backwards with the force of the impact. "One is not enough, I will kill them all," Baby 5 shouted, as those around her were surprised by the rage of this woman who had just appeared. Baby 5 looked at each one of them. "You broke and messed up the captain's room," she exclaimed with a look of rage, leaving everyone, both allies and enemies, stunned. She began to transform into various weapons with her arm and started firing shots, making it difficult for Cypher Pal 9 agent to approach the Straw Hats. "Who is this crazy lady?" Khalifa asked, and these words were followed by a hawk-like glare from Baby 5, as her arms turned into blades. She kicked the air with a technique she had perfected after a month of training with Luffy. Her body used to be weak, relying essentially on her fruit, but she learned to become strong in a month of training with the power of the more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, since it was worth several months with Luffy's multiplication. Khalifa was scared by the crazy woman appearing in front of her with blades ready to cut her. The Cypher Pal 9 agent group, already thinking it would be easy to deal with the members of the ship who were already fighting, had a big surprise with this woman starting to attack them. Even Rob Lucci, who prided himself on being a special weapon, was fighting against Robin herself, and having difficulty facing her, even after transforming into his zone, but Robin was stronger than him now. She could punch him, transforming her arm into a giant, something Luffy suggested Lucy could do with her human fruit model, Sun God Nika Devil Fruit. He received this giant punch from the girl, making him fly in the air with pain. Bueno opened a door behind Robin and tried to surprise her, but 6 hands grew on Robin's ribs and launched finger pistol while air bullets flew towards Bueno, without Robin turning around, hitting him as he fell bleeding. She may not have learned hockey yet, but after learning the 6 styles, she became a powerful warrior. "Damn, how can this be so strong? Isn't there anyone weak here?" Jabra said, indignant and wounded by Ecchi, who easily cut him. Meanwhile, at the port, Chaochu was unforgiving of the enemies, launching attacks in all directions. The port was already completely devastated, while the sailors made every effort possible to try to stop him, launching their weapons and cannon shots, which simply hit an animal and then exploded. But, as the smoke dissipated, Cerberus seemed not to care about the damage, as they began to launch more elements in all directions. "What can we do with this dog? We can't face it," a scared sailor shouted. "Help!" Another screamed, as the ground in front of them exploded and he was enveloped by the flames of one of its heads. "Help!" Some sailors also screamed before being turned into ice sculptures with its freezing rage. "Reinforcements, call for reinforcements!" Another shouted, as he tried to escape and the ground behind him exploded with lightning. "Mr. Commodore, we need reinforcements at the port. I repeat, we need reinforcements." An officer spoke, while looking at the chaos that the 3-headed dog was creating in the distance. "Call for reinforcements." Another was yelling into the Den Mushi. Meanwhile, in the water, the ships continued to fire at the Black Pearl from the side of the island. "Fire at that ship! Sink it!" an officer ordered, while pulling the cannon's rope, which exploded, launching new bullets towards that side. However, the bullets exploded above the ship, not damaging it, being protected by all 3 animals. "Damn, how can it be intact after so many shots? Who is stopping our bullets?" They spoke, not knowing that there were 3 animals protecting the ship at that moment. "My lord, and those 10 ships that sank on the other side, wasn't there a sea monster there?" a sailor asked worriedly. "Yes, we no longer see the monster, but stay alert, it returned to the water and might be coming for us." Another man spoke with a lot of concern in his tone. "The monster. It's here." Those ships realized a giant shadow that was beneath them. "Fire at the monster. Don't let it get close." Some screamed while exploding cannonballs in the water. But the Leviathan didn't seem to care about it while already being in the midst of all those ships. "Damn. Don't let it get close," said a captain before a huge shadow emerged behind him with the seawater rising over him and blocking the sunlight. "This." The man turned cautiously, as the Leviathan stared at him with fierce eyes, no longer bearing any trace of the gentle mermaid princess that was Shirahoshi. All the ships were scared while screaming together. "She's here." Before the war began on that side as Shirahoshi attacked the first ships in front of her. A group of commodores advanced towards the Serpent using moonwalk to prevent her from destroying the warships, which also began to fight against them. "We need reinforcements here," said a sailor on a Den Mushi while looking at the Serpent with fear. As all this was happening, on the island, the calls were passed to the commanders, watching the entire battle from strategic locations, but all frowned. Even Tsuru, who was fighting with Bastille against Yamato, heard everything on the radio on her waist. This fight is not what we expected. Tsuru frowned, as it seemed that the Navy was losing on all fronts to the pirates and Straw Hats. Chapter 229, in I's Lobby 06. Luffy found himself surrounded by various battles, but there was only one he was interested in, as he struck Akainu once again with his flames, fighting against the Admiral's lava. He diverted his attention, slightly worried about the money being carried by Nami at that moment. After all, if the money were lost, their entire scheme would be in vain. "You're underestimating me, you damned child." Akainu growled, noticing that Luffy was paying attention to something else. He increased his strength against Luffy, making him fall back. Luffy wasn't bothered by this as he flew. He used it to his advantage while quickly stabilizing and launching into the sky where various battles were happening at that moment. Explosions and flashes of combat filled the sky, while the 6 styles were executed by all the fighters. A particular duo caught Luffy's attention, and he smiled, heading towards the fight where Nami was battling Vice Admiral Doberman, the man using his weapons against the Garuda claws created by Nami. "Damn all these devil fruit users," Doberman said as he moved away from the claws and tried to stop them, while Nami continued launching attacks. She had entered Phase 1 as veils passed over her entire body, and she displayed large white wings. She kept all the money cases close to her, while a claw still held them. She looked at her enemy who flew towards her, and she also began to attack him, wielding a spear that Luffy had made her use as her official weapon. They exchanged blows, as she began to materialize claws in the air that tried to cut the Admiral, who dodged and tried to fend off both the claws and Nami's own spear. Luffy flew towards them. At that moment, he felt a sudden heat. He saw a huge fist of lava flying towards him, but he made no move to dodge. As the lava fist hit him, exploding the area around them, even the morning people were surprised by the explosion. However, Luffy reappeared unharmed but, unlike before, he entered Phase 2. Showing his beastly form, he still flew towards Nami. "Nami!" he shouted. "Give me the bag," he said, and the girl nodded, throwing the bag to him. He quickly caught it and made it disappear, getting all the money into the system. As soon as he was satisfied, new fists of lava flew towards him. There were at least 20 of them, as one of them didn't harm Luffy much, being a fire beast. He looked at Akainu's blows and began to wrap flames around his arm, before launching his own attack. The great flame rocks hit the lava fists, causing explosions and heat in the environment. These 2 attacks even affected the crew and vice admirals around. Boom. 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 "Hey, Luffy, be careful," Kuina complained as Momonga was on top of her. She was struggling to face him but used her Shiva transformation in Phase 1, where she created a cape on her back and increased her ice power with glowing veins in her body in a blue tone, and her eyes were almost white with a hint of blue. "Pay attention to the fight," Momonga said, appearing in front of Kuina trying to strike her, which she slightly avoided. He looked at her moving away as he dodged the blow between Luffy and Akainu. "You're very much like that girl who walks with Smoker," Momonga noticed. "Dashigi, I've met her," Kuina said, shrugging without saying anything more, and focused her energy on her sword, which began to glow the next moment, and she started to emit ice, freezing the space around. Momonga was surprised when a huge ice dragon formed and launched towards him, which he tried to counter with an aerial slash, but the dragon didn't stop as it tried to reach him. He dodged its teeth, while the ice dragon continued to chase after Momonga, who moved away before putting his sword back in the air and focusing as the dragon came back to attack him. Approaching closely, he focused on his fencing and launched the attack just as the dragon made another strike, and Momonga cut the creature in half, dispersing it, but he didn't have time to pay attention to that because above him, Kuina suddenly appeared and attacked him, crossing their swords in those moments. "This ice power, not even Kuzen can create creatures that attack," Momonga murmured as sparks flew from the clashing swords. They only stopped trying to overpower each other because at that moment, Hugo and Vice Admiral Maynard appeared between them, exchanging rapid punches with their fists as they ran through the chaos, appearing in the middle of many people's fight as they exchanged blows against each other. "You're strong, big guy," he commented. "You haven't seen anything yet," Hugo said, and his body began to transform into various rock spikes spread across his entire body, entering Phase 1 of Titan, and before the Vice Admiral could react, Hugo was already on top of him launching an attack that hit his face and sent the Vice Admiral flying to the opposite side. The Vice Admiral flew to the ground, falling almost on the lava left by Akainu behind Luffy at that moment. Hugo didn't want to wait and flew down, propelling his body with moonwalk as he approached, making the ground explode where he had knocked down the Vice Admiral. The ground cracked and rose with the impact, but while Hugo was in the midst of the dust, a punch with Haki hit him, making him retreat several meters away. "You're good. But you still have a lot to learn, big guy," the man said while rubbing his cheek after being hit by the pirate and spitting out some blood. Let's go for the second round, the Navy man said with a smile. Above them, an explosion occurred. Vivi transformed her arm into a hurricane ball and attacked Dalmatian, who tried to hit her with his hockey-imbued fists. The explosion made everyone retreat, but Vivi ended up losing the advantage as Dalmatian returned to attack her.